Before we begin, I want you to imagine this happening to you. What would you do? If you enjoy stories that make you think and feel, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps this channel grow. And tell me in the comments what you would have done.
The auction block wasn't supposed to be her destiny. Valeria Montoya never imagined her own father would sell her like merchandise to erase his gambling debts. Now she stands in Madrid's most exclusive underground club, surrounded by wealthy predators bidding on her freedom. Her hands tremble as strange men assess her like property. Just when she thinks her nightmare can't get worse, the room falls silent. Adrian Vega has arrived, billionaire, crime lord, the man even monsters fear. His cold eyes lock onto hers, and with one word, he claims her. But rescue and captivity, she'll soon learn, can wear the same face. If you want to see how Valeria survives the world's most dangerous man, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. Otim. The fluorescent lights of the basement club cast sickly shadows across Valeria's face as rough hands shoved her forward. Her bare feet stumbled on cold marble floors, the thin silk robe they'd forced her into offering no protection against the air conditioning or the dozens of eyes already consuming her. Lote 23, a voice announced through invisible speakers. Lot 23, as if she were furniture. Valeria's throat closed. This couldn't be happening. 48 hours ago, she'd been a university student in her small apartment, studying for exams and worrying about normal things, grades, rent, whether she'd have enough money for groceries. Then her father's associates had kicked down her door at 3 a.m. "Your father sends his regards," the lead man had said, his smile revealing gold teeth. "He's arranged for you to settle his debts." She'd fought, screamed until her voice gave out. None of it mattered. They drugged her, and when she woke, she was here, in whatever fresh hell this place was. The room before her looked like a gentleman's club designed by someone with too much money and too little soul. Leather chairs formed a semicircle around a raised platform. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Artwork that probably cost more than her father's debts decorated walls of deep burgundy and black. But the elegance was a lie. The men lounging in those expensive chairs, sipping rare whiskey and smoking cigars that cost more than most people's monthly salary. They were predators in tailored suits, and she was tonight's entertainment. "Gentlemen," the auctioneer continued, a thin man in a three-piece suit who spoke with the detached professionalism of someone selling cars, not people. "This particular offering comes to us from Vicente Montoya, settling a debt of 300,000 euros. The young lady is 22 years old, university educated, and I'm assured she's—" He paused with a meaningful smile. "Untouched." Bile rose in Valeria's throat. Her father had sold more than her freedom. He'd advertised her like a product with features. "We'll start the bidding at 50,000 euros. 50, a voice called immediately. Valeria's eyes darted to the source, a heavy-set man with gray temples and rings on every finger. 75, another countered, this one younger, maybe 40, with slicked back hair and a smile that made Valeria's skin crawl. 100,000, a third voice, heavily accented, from a man she couldn't quite see in the shadows. The numbers climbed with terrifying speed, 150, 200, 250. Each increase felt like another lock clicking into place on a cage she'd never escape. Valeria's breathing came faster, her vision tunneled. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen in modern Spain in the 21st century. In 300,000, the gray-templed man announced triumphantly. The auctioneer raised his gavel. 300,000 euros, going once. The doors at the back of the room opened. Every head turned. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the auctioneer froze, his gavel suspended in air. Valeria heard the footsteps before she saw their source, measured, unhurried. The sound of expensive leather on marble, each step echoing with absolute confidence. Then the crowd parted, and she saw him. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with shoulders that filled out his charcoal suit like it had been painted on. Dark hair styled with casual precision, the kind that looked effortless but probably required a barber who charged more per hour than most lawyers. Sharp jawline, Aristocratic features that might have been handsome if they weren't set in an expression of such complete detachment, but it was his eyes that stopped Valeria's breath. Cold, dark, assessing everything and revealing nothing. He walked past the seated men without acknowledging them, though several nodded deferentially. When he reached the center of the room, his gaze finally lifted to the platform where Valeria stood. Their eyes met. Valeria felt like she'd been struck by lightning. Those dark eyes moved over her face with the intensity of a physical touch, cataloging every detail. Not with the greedy hunger of the other men. This was different, colder, more dangerous, like a collector examining a rare artifact he might or might not choose to acquire. "Senor Vega," the auctioneer stammered, his professional composure cracking. "We weren't expecting, that is, we didn't realize you would be attending tonight's—" "The debt," the man interrupted, his voice low and precise, carrying easily through the silent room. "Vicente Montoya owes me 300,000 euros. The auctioneer's face went pale. "Yes, of course, Senor Vega. This lot is being offered to settle that exact—" "Then the auction is over." He turned to face the room, his hands sliding casually into his pockets. The gesture looked relaxed. The energy radiating from him was anything but. "The debt is mine. The girl is mine. Does anyone have objections?" Silence. The gray-templed man who'd been winning the bidding looked like he wanted to speak, his face reddening, but when Vega's gaze landed on him, he shook his head quickly and reached for his whiskey with a trembling hand. Vega turned back to the auctioneer. "Have her cleaned up and brought to my car in 15 minutes. "Of course, Senor Vega, right away. Should we, But the man was already walking toward the exit, his presence seeming to vacuum all the air from the room as he departed. The doors closed behind him with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the stunned silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then the room erupted in whispers. Did he just— 300,000, no negotiation. I heard Vicente tried to run from Vega's debt for 6 months. Poor girl. Better the auction than Adrian Vega. Valeria barely heard them. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the platform's edge, her whole body shaking. From one nightmare into another. She'd heard that name before. Everyone in Madrid had heard that name, even if only in whispers. Adrian Vega, real estate magnate, tech investor, legitimate businessman whose fortune seemed to multiply overnight. And according to every rumor, every hushed conversation in university cafeterias and corner bars, the most powerful crime lord in Spain. On your feet. A woman's hand gripped Valeria's arm, yanking her up. She was older, maybe 50, with severe features and a black dress that suggested she worked for the club. You heard, Senor Vega? 15 minutes. Valeria stumbled as she was pulled toward a side door. Please, she whispered, finding her voice. Please, I can't. Save it. The woman dragged her down a corridor lined with more expensive art. You think you're special? You think your tears matter? Senor Vega owns half of Madrid and most of the people in it. Your father gambled away money that wasn't his. You're the payment. That's all there is to it. They reached a small room, more of a large closet, with a sink, mirror, and a garment bag hanging on the wall. The woman thrust Valeria inside. Wash your face, fix your hair, put on the dress in that bag. You have 12 minutes now. The door slammed shut. Valeria stood in the small space, her reflection staring back from the mirror. She looked like a ghost, eyes too wide, skin too pale. The silk robe hung off one shoulder, revealing the bruise where her father's men had grabbed her too roughly during the kidnapping. She thought about running. The room had no windows, but maybe the door wasn't locked. Maybe she could slip past the woman, find an exit, disappear into Madrid's streets. The door opened. The severe woman stood there with 2 large men flanking her, as if she'd read Valeria's thoughts. 10 minutes, she said flatly, then closed the door again. Valeria's hand shook as she turned to the sink. She splashed cold water on her face, watching her reflection blur and reform. Some distant part of her brain noted how surreal this was. 2 days ago, her biggest worry had been a literature exam. Now she was being gift-wrapped for a crime lord. The garment bag contained a dress that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Midnight blue, simple cut, elegant fabric that felt like water between her fingers. She pulled it on with mechanical movements, her mind still trying to process everything. The dress fit perfectly, which somehow made everything worse. Someone had known her measurements. Someone had planned this. Her father, the man who'd raised her, taught her to ride a bike, attended her graduation, the man who'd apparently decided his gambling addiction was worth more than his daughter's freedom. Rage bubbled up beneath the fear, hot and acidic and almost welcome, because at least anger was something she could hold on to, something that felt like strength instead of this paralyzing terror. A knock on the door. Time's up. The severe woman led her through more corridors, up a service elevator, and finally into an underground parking garage. The contrast was jarring, from the club's Baroque elegance to concrete and fluorescent lights and the smell of motor oil. A car waited in a reserved space near the elevator. Not just any car. A Bentley, black and gleaming, its engine running with a quiet purr that suggested barely restrained power. The rear door opened. Adrian Vega sat in the back seat, his attention on a tablet, looking like he was reviewing quarterly reports rather than collecting human payment for a debt. He didn't look up as the severe woman guided Valeria to the car. "Get in," the woman ordered. Valeria's feet wouldn't move. Every survival instinct she had screamed at her to run, but the two large men had positioned themselves behind her, and there was nowhere to go anyway, was there? She'd already learned that lesson. "Now!" the woman snapped. Valeria slid into the car, the leather seat cool beneath her. The door closed with a solid thunk that sounded like a vault ceiling. The severe woman stepped back, and the Bentley began to move. The silence in the car was suffocating. Vega still hadn't looked at her, his eyes on the tablet, one hand moving across its surface with casual swipes. The driver, another large man in a dark suit, navigated out of the parking garage without a word. Madrid's streets slid past the tinted windows. Late-night shoppers. Couples leaving restaurants. Normal people living normal lives. Valeria watched them with a desperate yearning. 24 hours ago, she'd been one of them. "Your father," Vega said suddenly, his voice cutting through the silence, "is a remarkably stupid man." Valeria's head whipped toward him. He still hadn't looked up from his tablet. He borrowed money from 3 different organizations, used it to chase losses at the casino. When my people approached him about repayment, he offered his daughter as collateral. Now Vega did look up, his dark eyes finding hers with unsettling precision. "Did you know?" "No." The word came out barely above a whisper. He returned to his tablet. "He tried to run, moved you to a new apartment under a false name, changed his phone number, avoided his usual haunts." A slight smile touched his lips, though it held no warmth. As if any of that would matter. Valeria's hands clenched in her lap. "What are you going to do to me?" "That depends entirely on you." "On me?" Her voice rose despite her fear. "You bought me like property. What choice do I have?" "More than you had in that club." He set the tablet aside, giving her his full attention for the first time. The intensity of that gaze made her want to shrink into the seat. "Those men would have used you until you broke, discarded you when they got bored. You'd be lucky to survive 6 months. And you're different?" Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or irritation. "Very." The car turned onto a tree-lined street in one of Madrid's most exclusive neighborhoods. Buildings here didn't advertise their wealth. They whispered it through perfect architecture, discreet security, and price tags that would make most people dizzy. The Bentley pulled into an underground garage beneath a modern building that probably had its own Wikipedia page. The driver parked in a private space, got out, and opened Vega's door with practiced efficiency. Vega stepped out, buttoning his suit jacket with one hand. He paused, looking back at Valeria, who hadn't moved. "Are you coming, or would you prefer to sleep in the car?" She wanted to say she'd prefer to sleep in her own bed, in her own apartment, in her own life. Instead, she climbed out, her legs unsteady beneath her. A private elevator carried them up in silence. Vega stood with his hands in his pockets, looking entirely at ease. Valeria counted the floors. 20, 30, 40. The elevator didn't stop until 52. The doors opened directly into a penthouse. Valeria had never seen anything like it. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Madrid's skyline, the city lights spreading out like a galaxy. The space itself was enormous. Open floor plan, minimal furniture, everything in shades of black, gray, and chrome. Modern art that probably belonged in museums, A kitchen that looked like it had never been used, everything sterile and perfect and cold, like the man who lived here. The guest room is down that hall, second door on the right, Vega said, moving toward what looked like a home office. You'll find clothes in the closet. They should fit. Of course they would. Someone had planned this too. Bathroom is attached. Don't bother trying the windows. They don't open, and you're 52 stories up anyway. He paused at his office door. I expect you downstairs at 8 tomorrow morning. Don't make me come find you. Why? The word burst out before Valeria could stop it. Why am I here? What do you want from me? Vega looked at her with those unreadable dark eyes. Your father's debt is cleared. You're no longer at risk of being sold to the highest bidder. You have a safe place to sleep and more resources at your disposal than you've ever had in your life. He tilted his head slightly. Gratitude would be appropriate. Gratitude? Her fear was rapidly being consumed by rage. You think I should thank you for kidnapping me? I think you should thank me for keeping you alive. His voice remained calm, almost bored. The club would have killed you eventually. Your father's other creditors would have done worse. I'm the closest thing to a savior you're going to get. Some savior. I'm still a prisoner. No. He stepped closer, and Valeria found herself backing up until she hit the wall. He didn't touch her, but his presence alone was overwhelming. You're protected. There's a difference. Learn it. He turned and walked into his office, closing the door with a soft click. Valeria stood in the massive living room, her heart pounding, her fists clenched so tight her nails bit into her palms. Protected. As if she'd chosen this. As if she had any say in what happened to her. She found the guest room exactly where he'd said. It was bigger than her entire apartment had been. King-size bed with hotel-quality linens. Attached bathroom with a rainfall shower and a tub that could fit 3 people. The closet contained clothes in her exact size. Jeans, blouses, dresses, even pajamas, all with the tags still on. Valeria pulled out a pair of pajamas mechanically, showered in water so hot it turned her skin red, changed clothes, climbed into bed, and finally, alone in the darkness of this gilded cage, she let herself cry. Morning arrived with brutal sunlight streaming through windows that had no curtains. Valeria woke disoriented, her first thought that she'd overslept for class. Then the previous day crashed back into her consciousness, and the expensive sheets felt like a shroud. She checked the clock, 7:47 a.m. 13 minutes to be downstairs, whatever that meant. She dressed quickly in jeans and a simple black blouse from the closet, both fitting perfectly in a way that continued to unsettle her. Brushed her teeth with the new toothbrush she found in the bathroom, its package unopened, as if they kept a supply ready for… what? Did Vega make a habit of collecting women? The thought made her stomach turn. She found him in the kitchen, of all places, making coffee. He'd traded his suit for dark jeans and a gray t-shirt that somehow looked as expensive as formal wear. Without the armor of his business attire, he looked younger, maybe early 30s, still dangerous. But human, at least. Sit, he said without looking up, gesturing to the breakfast bar. Valeria sat, watching him move through the kitchen with surprising competence. He poured 2 cups of coffee, slid one across the counter to her, and leaned against the opposite side. Questions, he said. Ask them now. Get it out of your system. She had about 1,000. She started with the most pressing. What happens to me? You stay here. For how long? Until I decide otherwise. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He sipped his coffee. Next question. My father is no longer your concern. Vega's voice went flat. He sold you. That transaction is complete. You're under my protection now, which means he can't touch you. Neither can his other creditors. Neither can anyone else in this city. Protection. She spat the word. You keep using that word like it's something I asked for. Would you prefer I'd left you in that club? No, she wouldn't. As much as she hated this situation, hated him, hated every moment of her current reality, that club had been worse. Those men with their hungry eyes and casual cruelty. At least Vega hadn't touched her. Yet. The thought must have shown on her face because his expression hardened. I'm not going to rape you, if that's your concern. I don't need to force women into my bed. Heat flooded Valeria's cheeks. Then why am I here? Your father's debt needed settling. So sell me back to him. Your father has nothing left to sell. He lost his business, his apartment, everything. He's currently staying in a shelter on the east side of the city. Vega set down his coffee cup with precise care. Even if he had resources, I wouldn't return you. That debt is closed. I'm not property. Then stop acting like you have no agency. His eyes flashed. You want to leave? Fine. Walk out that door. See how long you survive without my protection. Valeria stood, her chair scraping against the floor. You think you're doing me a favor? You think I should be grateful you're keeping me in a cage, even if it's a pretty one? I think you should be smart enough to recognize reality. He straightened to his full height, and Valeria was reminded of exactly how much bigger he was. Your father destroyed your life. I'm offering you a new one. The cage, as you call it, is temporary. How temporary depends on you. Depends on me how? Earn my trust. He picked up both coffee cups, dumped them in the sink. Prove you're not going to run to the police or try something stupid. Show me you understand how the world actually works, not the fairy tale version they teach in university. And then? Then we'll discuss your options. It wasn't freedom, but it was something. A crack in the prison walls. Valeria sat back down slowly. What do you want me to do? For now, don't cause problems. The penthouse has everything you need. Food, entertainment, internet access, though it's monitored, so don't waste time trying to call for help. There are guards in the building. They're invisible until you do something that requires their intervention. Like trying to leave. Like trying to leave, he confirmed. I have meetings today. I'll be back this evening. Familiarize yourself with the space. Rest. Process. Whatever you need. He moved toward the door, grabbed a suit jacket from a hook. Vega, Valeria called. He paused, looking back. Why me? Specifically. Why not just, I don't know, take the money loss? You're rich enough. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then something shifted in his expression, something she couldn't quite read, but that felt almost like recognition. Your father made a promise, he said finally. I collect on promises. He left, the front door closing with a quiet click that somehow sounded like thunder. The day stretched endlessly. Valeria explored the penthouse like a prisoner memorizing her cell. She found Vega's bedroom, larger than the guest room, decorated in the same minimalist style, with a view of the city that probably cost more per square foot than most people's houses. She didn't go inside. Some instinct told her that would be crossing a line. The home office was locked. She tried every window, all sealed, as he'd said, 52 stories up. Even if she could break the glass, there was nowhere to go but down. The television had every streaming service known to humanity. The kitchen was stocked with food that looked like it came from Michelin-starred restaurants. The bathroom had products that cost more than her monthly student budget. Everything designed for comfort, for luxury, for keeping her content in her cage. By evening, she'd worked herself into a quiet fury. This wasn't living. This was existing in a very expensive holding cell, waiting for her captor to decide what happened next. Vega returned at 7:30. She heard him before she saw him. The front door opening, footsteps in the foyer, the rustle of him removing his jacket. He found her in the living room, staring out at the city lights. Productive day? He asked. I'm a prisoner in a tower. How productive could it be? He moved to a bar cart she hadn't noticed earlier, poured himself 2 fingers of what looked like very expensive scotch. You're being dramatic. You're being a kidnapper. I'm being your protection. He took a sip, watching her over the rim of the glass. Whether you appreciate it or not. I don't. I gathered. He settled into one of the modern chairs, looking annoyingly comfortable. What would satisfy you, Valeria? What would make this arrangement tolerable? The question caught her off guard. Freedom. Not an option, next request. Why not? Because you'd run straight to the authorities who would ask uncomfortable questions, which would lead to investigations I don't need. Or worse, you'd run into someone from your father's other debts, and I'd have to retrieve your body from a dumpster. Neither scenario appeals to me. He gestured with his glass. Something achievable. Valeria thought about it. If freedom wasn't on the table, and clearly it wasn't, what did she want? Answers. To what? Everything. Who you really are, what you really do, why you care about my father's debt when you could buy and sell him 100 times over, why I'm here instead of in that club, why. She stopped, surprised by the heat in her own voice. Vega studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the windows, and looked out at the city spread below them. I run several businesses, he said finally. Some legitimate, some less so. Real estate, technology investments, import-export companies. On paper, I'm a self-made billionaire who got lucky with timing and smart investments. And off paper? Off paper, I control most of the organized crime in Madrid and several other Spanish cities. Drug distribution, money laundering, protection rackets, illegal gambling, the clubs where they sell girls like you were selling. I own 3 of them. He turned back to face her, his expression neutral. Does that frighten you? It should. It absolutely should. But Valeria found herself more fascinated than afraid. Why tell me? Because you asked, and because you already know. You recognized my name in that club. He moved closer, stopping just outside her personal space. Your father borrowed from me 6 months ago. Used the money to gamble at one of my competitors' establishments. Lost everything. Tried to run. Very stupid. So you claim me as punishment? I claimed you as payment. There's a difference. His eyes searched her face. Do you know what would have happened if I'd left you there? You keep saying that like it matters. You still took me. Yes, I did. No apology in his voice, no regret. Your father sold you to clear a debt. At least this way you're alive. You're safe. You're not being passed around to whoever has enough money. Just to you. I haven't touched you. Yet. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. He moved closer, backing her against the window. His hands came up on either side of her head, caging her in without actually making contact. Valeria's breath caught. If I wanted you, he said quietly, his voice low and rough, I would have taken you already. I don't need to wait for permission. I don't need to earn trust. You're in my home, under my protection, bound to me by a debt your father created. If I wanted to claim you the way those men in the club wanted to claim you, there's nothing and no one to stop me. Valeria's heart hammered against her ribs. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But beneath the fear ran something else, something that felt almost like a challenge. Then why haven't you? She whispered. For a heartbeat, something shifted in his expression. The cold mask cracked. She saw heat there. Want. Quickly suppressed, but not before she'd recognized it. He pushed away from the window, putting distance between them. Because unlike your father, I have rules. Lines I don't cross. He finished his scotch in one swallow. Dinner will be delivered in an hour. I have work to do. He disappeared into his office, leaving Valeria against the window, her pulse racing, her mind spinning with questions that had no safe answers. Bis. The days developed a pattern. Vega left early, returned late. They orbited each other like distant planets, sharing space but rarely interacting. He provided everything she needed except freedom. She accepted it all except his justifications. On the 4th day, she tried to leave. Not through the front door. She wasn't that naive. But the service entrance she'd discovered near the kitchen. She waited until Vega left for the day, then tried the handle. Locked. She searched for tools, found a letter opener in a drawer, tried to pick the lock the way she'd seen in movies. The door opened. Not from her efforts. From the outside. A man stood there. Huge, bald, expressionless. One of Vega's security. He didn't speak, didn't need to, just looked at her with flat eyes and waited. Valeria stepped back. The man closed the door. She heard multiple locks engage. 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't try that again. She threw the phone across the room, watched it bounce off the couch, wanted to scream until her voice gave out. Vega found her that evening in the same spot, staring at the city lights, her arms wrapped around herself. I heard you had an adventurous afternoon, he said. She didn't turn. Your spies are efficient. My security is competent. He moved to stand beside her at the window. Did you really think I wouldn't have the service entrance monitored? I had to try. Why? The question surprised her enough to make her look at him. Because I'm a prisoner. You're protected. Stop saying that like it's different. It is different. He turned to face her fully. Do you know what your father's other creditor does to people who don't pay? Antonio Ruiz. He operates out of the Port District, specializes in human trafficking. When someone defaults on a loan, he takes their family members, daughters especially, ships them to North Africa or Eastern Europe. They're never heard from again. Valeria's blood went cold. My father owed money to a trafficker? Among others, your father's gambling problem was extensive. Vega's voice remained level, delivering horror with the same tone he'd used to discuss quarterly earnings. Ruiz wanted you. I got to you first. He's not happy about it. Which means if you leave this building, if you somehow get past my security and make it to the street, you have maybe 20 minutes before his people find you. And trust me, Valeria, what I'm doing looks like a vacation compared to what he would do. She wanted to argue, wanted to call him a liar, but she'd heard about Antonio Ruiz. Everyone had. His name appeared in news stories about police raids and disappeared witnesses. The kind of man whose very existence proved the world was darker than most people wanted to believe. So I'm here because you and some trafficker are having a pissing contest over who gets to own me. You're here because I claimed you first. He stepped closer. And because unlike Ruiz, I have no intention of selling you. You're under my protection. Permanently. Permanently. The word felt like a life sentence. Until the situation changes. Until you're no longer valuable to my enemies. Until you prove you won't do something stupid the moment I give you freedom. His jaw tightened. Whichever comes first. And if that never happens? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The silence said everything. Valeria turned back to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Behind her, Vega's reflection was equally clear, dark and solid and immovable. I hate you, she whispered. I know. He left her there, disappearing into his office, and Valeria finally understood the true dimensions of her cage. It wasn't the penthouse, wasn't the locks, or the guards, or the 52 stories. It was the simple fact that outside these walls, there were worse monsters waiting, and the one who'd claimed her was the only thing standing between her and them. 2 weeks passed in a strange suspension of reality. Valeria woke each morning in silk sheets that cost more than her former life, ate meals that appeared like clockwork, and spent her days navigating the invisible boundaries of her gilded prison. She learned the rhythms of Vega's schedule, gone by 7, back after 8, often smelling of expensive cologne and danger. She learned which guards worked which shifts, though they never spoke to her. She learned that the penthouse had a library she'd somehow missed initially, stocked with first editions and classics in multiple languages. She learned that captivity, even comfortable captivity, could drive a person slowly insane. On the 16th day, she was reading in the library when Vega appeared in the doorway. Earlier than usual. Still in his suit, but his tie was loosened, his jacket slung over one arm. He looked tired in a way she hadn't seen before. You read Spanish literature, he observed, nodding at the Garcia Marquez in her hands. I was studying it. Before. She didn't need to specify before what. They both knew. He moved into the room, scanning the shelves with what might have been actual interest. What were you studying? Comparative literature. I was in my final year. Were you any good? The question caught her off guard. Yes, I was going to apply for graduate programs in the fall. I had a professor who thought I could get funding for... She stopped, the loss hitting her fresh. That life was gone. Those dreams belonged to someone else now. Vega pulled a book from the shelf, examined it, replaced it. You could continue. What? Your studies, online courses. The penthouse has everything you'd need. I could arrange access to university databases, arrange for books to be delivered. He turned to face her. You're not being punished, Valeria. You're being kept safe. There's a difference. You keep saying that because you keep forgetting it. He loosened his tie further, and she noticed a spot of something dark on his collar. Blood, maybe. She didn't ask. What would make this tolerable for you? Freedom. Besides that, she closed the book, studying him. This was the longest conversation they'd had since that night at the window. The most interest he'd shown in her beyond ensuring she was alive and contained. Why do you care? Because miserable people do unpredictable things, and because you're going to be here for a while. We might as well make it bearable. He sat in the chair across from her, and the casualness of the gesture felt significant somehow, like he was offering something. Trust, maybe. Or at least the illusion of it. I want to go outside, Valeria said. No. Then this conversation is pointless. I said outside is off the table. I didn't say you had to stay in the penthouse. He leaned back, watching her. The building has a gym, a pool, a rooftop garden. All private, all secure. You could have access. It wasn't freedom, but it was more space than four walls. What's the catch? No catch. You stay within the building, you don't try to contact anyone, you don't cause problems. Simple. And if I do? Then I revoke the privileges, and we go back to you staring out windows all day. His eyes held hers. Your choice. Valeria wanted to throw the book at him, wanted to scream that choices made under duress weren't real choices, but she also needed something more than this suffocating routine. Fine. Fine, he echoed. Starting tomorrow, security will escort you to whichever amenities you want to use. 2 hours in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. Don't abuse it. He stood to leave, and Valeria found herself speaking before she could think better of it. Why are you doing this? Vega paused at the door. Doing what? Being reasonable. You could just keep me locked up. You have the power. Why offer anything? For a long moment, he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. Because I remember what it's like to feel trapped. Then he was gone, leaving Valeria alone with questions that had no safe answers and a book she could no longer focus on. Chach. The next morning, a different guard appeared at her door. Younger than the others, maybe 30, with a professional demeanor that somehow seemed less threatening. Miss Montoya, I'm Carlos. I'll be your escort today. The gym occupied the entire 48th floor. State-of-the-art equipment, floor-to-ceiling windows offering views that made Valeria's stomach drop, and absolutely no other people. Carlos stationed himself by the elevator, far enough to give her the illusion of privacy, close enough to remind her she was still monitored. Valeria hadn't exercised properly in weeks. She started on the treadmill, slowly at first, then faster, running nowhere. The metaphor wasn't lost on her, but the movement felt good. The burn in her muscles felt real. For 2 hours, she could pretend she was training for something, working towards something, instead of just existing in stasis. Time, Miss Montoya, Carlos called eventually. Back upstairs. Lunch appeared. Fresh mozzarella and tomato salad, crusty bread, fruit that tasted like summer. Valeria ate mechanically, her mind already anticipating the afternoon session. The rooftop garden surprised her. She'd expected something small, decorative. Instead, she found a genuine outdoor space, trees and massive planters, flower beds, a small lawn area, even a koi pond. The city sprawled around them in every direction, close enough to see but impossibly far from reach. 30 minutes, Carlos said, taking up his position near the access door. Valeria walked the perimeter slowly, breathing real air for the first time in weeks. The sun on her face felt like benediction. She could see the street below, tiny cars and tinier people going about their lives. Normal lives. Free lives. She wondered if anyone down there could see her. If they'd think she was just some rich woman enjoying her luxury building's amenities. If they'd ever guess she was a prisoner in paradise. Miss Montoya. Carlos's voice held a warning note. She'd drifted too close to the edge, she realized. The rooftop had waist-high glass barriers, but she'd been leaning against one, looking down. Probably looked like she was considering jumping. I'm not suicidal, she said, stepping back. Good. Senor Vega would be displeased. The phrasing struck her. Not Senor Vega would be concerned, displeased, like she was a possession that shouldn't damage itself. The remainder of the 2 weeks fell into this new rhythm. Morning gym sessions where she pushed herself harder each day, working out frustrations she couldn't otherwise express. Afternoon garden visits where she memorized every plant, every stone, every detail of this tiny piece of outside world. And Vega, appearing at odd hours, sometimes watching her from doorways she didn't know he occupied. Never commenting, just observing with those dark, unreadable eyes. One evening, she found him in the library, actually reading. The surprise must have shown on her face. "I do use these books," he said dryly. "They're not just decoration." I didn't say anything. "You were thinking it." He turned a page. "You think I'm some thug who buys first editions to impress people. Are you?" "Sometimes." The corner of his mouth quirked, almost a smile. "But I also read them. My mother was a literature professor before she died. She insisted I appreciate the written word." Valeria sat in her usual chair, suddenly curious despite herself. "What are you reading?" He showed her the cover. Borges. Labyrinths seemed appropriate given current circumstances. "Feeling trapped, Vega?" "Adrian," he corrected. "And no, I'm exactly where I choose to be. But I appreciate the metaphor." Adrian, she tested the name. It felt strange, more human than Vega, dangerous in a different way. They sat in silence for a while, both reading, the quiet almost comfortable. It struck Valeria how surreal this was, sitting peacefully with her captor, discussing literature like they were colleagues sharing a break room. "Your mother," she ventured. "How did she die?" His expression closed immediately. "That's not your concern. You know everything about my life, my father, my debts, probably my shoe size and favorite foods. I know nothing about you except that you're very good at ruining lives." "I didn't ruin your life, your father did. You participated. I collected a debt." He set the book aside. "Your father made choices. I simply ensured those choices had consequences. By making me the consequence. By keeping you alive." He stood, and she recognized the movement. He was done with this conversation. "Your father would have gotten you killed. At least this way, you're breathing. This isn't living." "No," he agreed, surprising her. "But it's surviving. Learn the difference." On the 23rd day, everything changed. Valeria was in the garden, watching the sunset paint Madrid in shades of gold and crimson, when she heard shouting from inside. Not just voices. Crashes. The unmistakable sound of violence. Carlos appeared in the doorway, his professional calm shattered. "Inside, now!" "What's happening?" "Now, Miss Montoya." She ran. Carlos grabbed her arm, pulled her toward the access door, and that's when she saw them. 3 men emerging from the elevator, guns drawn, their faces covered with masks. "Get down!" Carlos shoved her behind a large planter, his own weapon appearing in his hand with practiced speed. Gunfire. The sound was nothing like movies, sharper, louder, terrifying in its abruptness. Valeria pressed herself against the planter, her hands over her ears, her heart trying to escape her chest. More shots, shouting in Spanish too rapid for her to follow, the wet sound of something hitting the ground, then silence. Footsteps approaching. Valeria looked up and saw one of the masked men standing over her, his gun pointed at her head. "Up," he ordered in Spanish. "Ruiz wants to meet you." Antonio Ruiz, the trafficker, the man Adrian had warned her about. Terror locked her muscles. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the gun's barrel. "I said up!" The man reached for her. Another gunshot. The man jerked, stumbled, fell. Adrian stood in the doorway, his own weapon raised, his suit jacket discarded, blood on his white shirt. Not his blood, Valeria realized dimly. His eyes found hers across the rooftop. "Stay down!" The remaining attackers opened fire. Adrian moved with frightening efficiency, ducking, rolling, returning fire with precision that spoke of extensive training. This wasn't a businessman playing at danger. This was someone who knew violence intimately. The fight lasted maybe 30 seconds. When it ended, 3 bodies lay on the rooftop garden, and Adrian was walking toward her, his weapon still raised, his eyes scanning for additional threats. "Are you hurt?" He crouched beside her, his free hand gripping her shoulder. Valeria shook her head, unable to form words. "Carlos?" "Dead, sir." Another guard appeared, this one with a bleeding arm. They came up the service elevator. "We didn't see them until—" "Secure the building. Check every floor. I want to know how they got past building security." Adrian's voice was ice. Then he focused on Valeria again, his hand gentling on her shoulder. "Can you walk?" She nodded. He pulled her to her feet, keeping himself between her and the bodies. We're going to the penthouse. Fast. Don't look at anything. Just focus on my back. She followed numbly, her legs moving on autopilot. The elevator ride felt eternal. When they reached this penthouse, Adrian pulled her inside, locked the door, and immediately started making phone calls in rapid Spanish. Valeria sat on the couch, her whole body shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system in waves. She'd almost died. If Adrian had been 30 seconds later, he ended his call, holstered his weapon, and moved to crouch in front of her. Valeria, look at me. She did. His face was spattered with blood. There was a cut on his cheek she hadn't noticed before. Are you injured? He asked again, his hands running over her arms, checking for wounds with professional efficiency. No, I don't think so. Her voice broke. Carlos, is he really? Yes. Flat, final. Ruiz's men, they've been planning this for weeks apparently, waiting for the right moment. They said Ruiz wanted to meet me. Something dangerous flickered in Adrian's eyes. He's not going to get the chance. He knows where I am. He knows I won't let him have you. Adrian stood, paced to the window, stared out at the city. This building is no longer secure. We're moving. Moving where? My estate outside the city, 40 acres, private security, no public access. Ruiz can't touch you there. And if I don't want to go? He turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw real anger in his expression. Then you die. Is that what you want? Because I just killed 3 men to keep you alive, and Carlos died doing the same. So, if you'd prefer to take your chances with a human trafficking ring, tell me now so I can stop wasting resources. I didn't ask for this. Valeria shot to her feet. I didn't ask for any of this. Your war with Ruiz, Carlos dying, men trying to kidnap me. None of this is my choice. No, it's your father's choice. But you're living with it anyway. He moved closer and she saw the exhaustion beneath the anger. I'm trying to keep you alive, Valeria. That's all I've been doing since I walked into that club. So forgive me if I'm short on patience right now. They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, the evening's violence hanging between them like smoke. Why? Valeria whispered. Why does it matter so much? I'm just a debt payment. Why not give me to Ruiz and end the conflict? Because you're mine. The words came out rough, almost possessive. Your father sold you to me. That makes you my responsibility, mine to protect, and I don't surrender what's mine. The intensity in his voice sent something hot and confusing through Valeria's chest. I'm not property. No, you're not. He stepped back, ran a hand through his hair. Pack what you need. We leave in an hour. An hour? Ruiz will try again. Probably tonight. The estate is 2 hours outside Madrid. We need to move while I still have the advantage of surprise. He pulled out his phone, started typing. My people are cleaning up the rooftop now. By morning, this will look like it never happened. What about Carlos's family? Adrian looked up, something shifting in his expression. They'll be taken care of. Pension, life insurance, college funds for his kids. I pay well and I cover my people. But he's still dead. Yes. No justification, no excuse. He knew the risks. We all do. Valeria wanted to argue, to rage, to do something other than accept this casual relationship with violence. But exhaustion was setting in, replacing the adrenaline with bone-deep weariness. 1 hour, Adrian repeated. Don't make me carry you to the car. He disappeared into his office, leaving Valeria alone with the aftermath of her almost kidnapping and the terrifying realization that she'd been more frightened when Adrian hadn't been there than when he had. Well, the estate was exactly what Adrian had promised. Isolated, secure, and beautiful in a way that felt almost cruel. They arrived near midnight, the SUV pulling through gates that looked like they could stop a tank. The main house was 3 stories of modern architecture and old money, surrounded by manicured grounds and an army of security personnel who materialized from the darkness like ghosts. This way. Adrian placed a hand on her lower back, guiding her inside. The interior was warmer than the penthouse. Actual colors, deep blues and rich browns, mixed with the modern aesthetic. Art that looked chosen for love rather than investment. Furniture that seemed like it might actually be sat on. You live here? Valeria asked. Sometimes, when I need distance from the city. He led her upstairs to a bedroom suite that was easily twice the size of the penthouse's guest room. "You'll stay here. Bathroom through that door. Closet's already stocked." Of course it was. There are guards on the grounds 24/7. The estate has a state-of-the-art security system. Motion sensors, cameras, the works. "You're safe here." "Safe?" Valeria repeated. "Right. Safer than the penthouse." He moved to the door, paused. "Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." "Adrian." He turned back. "Thank you for—" She gestured vaguely. "For coming when you did." His expression softened fractionally. "I told you. You're mine to protect." He left, and Valeria was alone in this new cage. Larger, more secure. Still a cage. She unpacked mechanically, her mind replaying the rooftop, the gunfire, Carlos falling, Adrian appearing like some avenging angel, violence personified, saving her because she belonged to him. Property, protection, possession. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. The bed was massive and comfortable, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the masked man's gun pointed at her head, heard the crack of gunfire, felt the terror of almost death. Near 3 in the morning, she gave up and wandered downstairs in the pajamas someone had thoughtfully provided. The house was quiet, but not empty. She could sense the guards outside, the security cameras tracking her movement. She found a library similar to the penthouse's, curled up in a window seat overlooking dark grounds, and tried to lose herself in words that belonged to someone else's story. "Can't sleep either?" Valeria jumped, nearly dropping the book. Adrian stood in the doorway, dressed in dark pants and a t-shirt, looking as tired as she felt. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you." He moved into the room, poured himself a drink from a cabinet she hadn't noticed. "Want one?" "I don't drink. Might help you sleep. Or might make everything worse." He acknowledged that with a slight nod, settling into a chair across from her window seat. They sat in silence for a while, him with his whiskey, her with her unread book. "Carlos had 3 children," Adrian said eventually. 2 daughters and a son. His wife teaches elementary school. They were saving for a bigger house. Valeria's throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked about his family. Because you deserve to know the cost of keeping you safe." He took a sip of his drink. "His daughters are 7 and 9. The son is 4. They'll grow up without a father because Antonio Ruiz wanted to hurt me by taking you." "That's not my fault." "No, it's mine." He met her eyes. "I knew keeping you would start a war. I did it anyway." "Why?" "Because the alternative was letting Ruiz have you, and that wasn't acceptable." "Why not?" She leaned forward, needing to understand. "Be honest, really honest. Why does one debt payment matter enough to start a war?" Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set down his glass and leaned back, his eyes fixed on something she couldn't see. "When I was 15, my father sold my sister to cover a gambling debt." The words hit like a physical blow. Valeria's breath caught. She was 17, beautiful, smart, going to university in the fall. His voice remained steady, but something raw edged the words. "The man who bought her was a Russian arms dealer. He kept her for 6 months. When my father finally tried to get her back, we found her in a warehouse in Barcelona. He stopped, jaw tightening. She didn't survive what he did to her." "Adrian." "I was there when we found her body. I swore that day that I'd never let that happen to anyone else if I had the power to stop it." He looked at Valeria directly. "So when I walked into that club and saw you on that platform, saw the fear in your eyes, saw your father's debt paperwork with your name on it." He shook his head. "I wasn't seeing you. I was seeing Elena. And I wasn't going to make the same mistake my father made." Valeria's chest ached. "I'm not your sister." "No, you're not. But you're someone's daughter, someone's—" He stopped himself. "You matter, whether you believe that or not. And if I'd been ugly, old, not worth collecting, I would have claimed you anyway." No hesitation. "The debt was mine. You were part of it. That makes you my responsibility." She wanted to be angry at the possessiveness in his words, wanted to rage against being claimed like property. But beneath the fear and resentment, she felt something else. something that felt dangerously close to gratitude, to trust. Your sister, she said softly. Elena, what was she like? Adrian's expression shifted, surprise, maybe, that she'd asked. Stubborn, brilliant. She wanted to be a doctor, used to practice suturing on oranges in our kitchen. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She would have liked you, I think. You have the same fire. I don't feel very fiery right now. You threw money in my face. You tried to escape. You question everything I say. He stood, collected his glass. Trust me, you have fire. He moved toward the door, then paused. The nightmares will fade. The fear gets manageable. You're safe here, Valeria. I promise you that. How can you promise that? Ruiz almost doesn't count. You're alive. You're here. And I'm not going to let him take you. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Get some sleep. Tomorrow starts a new routine. He left her there, and Valeria sat in the window seat for a long time, processing everything he'd revealed. A sister sold and murdered. A 15-year-old boy finding her body. A vow made in grief and rage. Suddenly, Adrian Vega made terrible, tragic sense. She wasn't his captive, she realized. She was his redemption. Morning brought new rules. Breakfast appeared on a terrace overlooking grounds that seemed to stretch forever. Adrian joined her, already dressed for business despite the isolated location. You'll have more freedom here, he said, spreading jam on toast with precise movements. The grounds are safe to explore. The gym is in the east wing. There's a pool, tennis courts, stables if you ride. Stables? My mother loved horses. I kept them after she died. He sipped his coffee. You can go anywhere on the estate. The only rule is you don't approach the gates and you don't try to leave the property. Or what? Or my security brings you back and we revisit the terms of your arrangement. He set down his cup. I'm trying to give you space, Valeria. Don't make me regret it. How generous. It is, actually. No anger in his tone, just fact. Most people in your position would be locked in a room with guards at the door. You're getting 40 acres of freedom. I suggest you use it wisely. He left for the city after breakfast, taking half his security team with him. The remaining guards were visible but distant, giving Valeria the illusion of solitude as she explored her new prison. The estate was stunning, gardens that probably required a full-time staff, a pool that looked like it belonged at a resort. The stables housed 6 horses, all beautifully maintained, their coats gleaming with care. Valeria hadn't ridden since she was a child, but something about the horses' quiet presence was soothing. She spent an hour just watching them, breathing the smell of hay and leather, pretending she was anywhere but here. Miss Montoya? A woman appeared, older, kind-faced, wearing practical clothes. I'm Rosa. I manage the estate. Senor Vega asked me to make sure you're settling in. I'm fine. Of course. Rosa's smile suggested she knew that was a lie. The kitchen is stocked with anything you might want. If you need something we don't have, just ask. I'll have it delivered. Thank you. Rosa hesitated, then spoke carefully. Senor Vega is a good man. I know circumstances aren't ideal, but he means well. Valeria almost laughed. He kidnapped me. He saved you. Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. I've worked for the Vega family for 20 years. I knew his mother, his sister. I know what drives him, and I know he wouldn't hurt you. He just keeps me prisoner instead. He keeps you alive. Rosa touched her arm briefly. Sometimes they're the same thing. She left, and Valeria was alone again with the horses and her thoughts. The days developed a pattern. Adrian appeared in the evenings, sometimes staying for dinner, sometimes just checking in before disappearing to make calls or review documents. They talked. Careful conversations about books, about the horses, about nothing that mattered. Building something that might have been trust if the foundation wasn't built on captivity. On the 5th night at the estate, Valeria woke to the sound of screaming. She bolted upright, heart racing, before realizing the screams were coming from down the hall. From Adrian's room. She should stay in bed. Should let him deal with his demons privately. Instead, she found herself in the hallway, moving toward his door. It was slightly ajar. Inside, she could see him thrashing in the bed, still asleep, caught in whatever nightmare held him. Elena, he gasped. No, no, please. Valeria pushed the door open fully. Adrian, He didn't wake. The nightmare held him tight. She moved to the bed, carefully sat on the edge. Adrian, wake up. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with bruising force. His eyes opened, wild and unfocused. It's me, Valeria said quickly. It's Valeria. You're safe. You're home. Recognition slowly filtered into his gaze. His grip on her wrist loosened, but didn't release. Valeria? You were having a nightmare. He sat up, scrubbing his free hand over his face. His skin was slick with sweat, his breathing ragged. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you. You were calling for Elena. His expression closed. I should have locked my door. Probably. She should leave. Should let him have his privacy. Instead, she stayed sitting on his bed, her wrist still encircled by his fingers. Does it happen often? Often enough. He finally released her, putting distance between them. You should go back to bed. So should you. I don't sleep well. I noticed. She studied him in the dim light filtering through his windows. He looked younger like this, vulnerable, human instead of dangerous. Do you want to talk about it? No. Okay. She stood, moved toward the door. Valeria. She turned back. Thank you for... He gestured vaguely. For waking me. Everyone deserves to escape their nightmares, she said quietly. Even you. She left him there and returned to her room, but sleep wouldn't come. She kept thinking about the fear in his voice when he'd called his sister's name, the vulnerability beneath all that control. Adrian Vega was a monster who built cages and collected debts, but he was also a broken man haunted by failure and loss. And Valeria was beginning to realize she couldn't hate both versions of him at the same time, which meant she was in far more danger than she'd thought. The next morning, neither of them mentioned the nightmare. Adrian appeared at breakfast looking composed and distant, the vulnerable man from the darkness replaced by the controlled businessman in tailored clothing. But something had shifted between them, a crack in the wall he'd built around himself, and Valeria couldn't unsee what she'd glimpsed through it. I have meetings in the city today, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. I'll be back late. Rosa will be here if you need anything. I'm not a child who needs supervision. No, you're a woman who nearly got kidnapped a week ago. He finally looked at her directly. Humor me. He left before she could respond, and Valeria spent the morning restless and unsettled. She tried reading in the library, but the words blurred together, tried swimming laps in the pool until her arms ached, but the physical exhaustion didn't quiet her mind. Finally, she found herself back at the stables, seeking the uncomplicated presence of the horses. That one's Midnight, Rosa said, appearing beside her. Senor Vega's favorite. His mother bought him the year before she died. The horse was magnificent, black as his name suggested, with intelligent eyes that seemed to assess Valeria with interest. Does he ride often? Valeria asked. Not as much as he should, too busy with business. Rosa opened the stall door. But he'd want you to ride if you'd like. It's good for the horses to be exercised. I haven't ridden in years. Midnight's gentle, smart. He'll take care of you. Rosa handed her a riding helmet from a cabinet. The trails through the property are beautiful. The guards know to give you space, but they'll keep you in sight. Valeria looked at the horse, at the open stall door, at the promise of movement and temporary freedom. Why are you being so nice to me? Rosa's expression softened. Because you remind me of someone, and because I think you and Senor Vega need each other more than either of you realizes. Before Valeria could question that cryptic statement, Rosa had saddled Midnight and was leading him out to the mounting block. The horse stood patiently as Valeria climbed on, muscle memory kicking in from childhood lessons. The main trail starts behind the east garden, Rosa said. Follow it and you can't get lost. Stay within the tree line and you'll be fine. The moment Midnight started moving, something inside Valeria loosened. The rhythm of the horse's gait, the warmth of the sun on her shoulders, the illusion of control. It all combined into something that felt dangerously close to peace. The trail wound through stands of oak and pine, opened into meadows dotted with wildflowers, circled back through shaded glens. She caught glimpses of security guards keeping their distance, but for the first time since that night in the club, Valeria felt something approaching freedom. She rode for 2 hours, until midnight's pace suggested he was ready to return, and arrived back at the stables flushed and windblown and almost happy. Rosa met her with a knowing smile and a glass of cold water. "Better?" she asked. "Better," Valeria admitted. She spent the afternoon exploring parts of the estate she'd avoided: the tennis courts, the gardens, the small greenhouse where someone grew herbs and vegetables. Each discovery made the cage feel slightly larger, slightly less suffocating. Adrian didn't return until after 10. Valeria heard his car on the gravel drive, heard him speaking rapid Spanish to someone on the phone, heard his footsteps pass her door. She waited for him to check on her like he usually did, but tonight he went straight to his room. She told herself she didn't care. Told herself it was better this way. Told herself she was relieved he was maintaining distance. The lies didn't convince her. Near midnight, she heard his door open, heard his footsteps on the stairs. Against her better judgment, she followed. She found him in the library, standing at the window with a tumbler of whiskey, still wearing his suit pants and dress shirt but with the tie discarded and the top buttons undone. He didn't turn when she entered. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "I could say the same to you." "I don't sleep much. You know that now." He took a sip of his drink. "You rode today. Rosa told me." "Midnight's wonderful. Your mother had good taste." A slight smile touched his lips. "She did. In horses, at least. In men, less so." "Your father?" "Was a gambler and a coward who destroyed everything he touched." No emotion in the words, just fact. She loved him anyway. It killed her. Valeria moved closer, studying his reflection in the dark window. How did she die? Cancer. Aggressive. She refused treatment until it was too late because my father had gambled away her insurance money. He finished his whiskey, set the glass down with careful precision. Elena was 14 when she died. I was 12. After that, it was just us and him, and he was worse than useless. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me important lessons about trust and dependency. He finally turned to face her, and about what happens when you let the wrong people have power over your life. The parallel wasn't subtle. Valeria held his gaze. Is that what you think you're teaching me? I think you already know it. Your father proved it when he sold you. He stepped closer, and Valeria caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with whiskey and something darker. The difference is, I'm not going to destroy you. I'm going to keep you safe until you're strong enough to protect yourself. And then what? You'll just let me go? Then we'll see. His eyes searched her face. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone broken, compliant, grateful for scraps of kindness. He reached up, and for a moment she thought he might touch her face, but his hand fell back to his side. You're none of those things. Would you prefer if I was? No. The word came out rough. No, I wouldn't. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Valeria knew she should step back, should retreat to her room, should maintain the careful distance that kept this arrangement from becoming something more complicated. Instead, she heard herself ask, why did you really claim me? The truth, not the story about your sister or the debt, the real reason. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I saw you on that platform, terrified and trying so hard to be brave, something in me recognized something in you. And I couldn't walk away. Recognized what? Someone who deserved better than the hand they'd been dealt. He did touch her then, his fingers grazing her cheek so lightly she almost thought she'd imagined it. Someone worth saving. Valeria's breath caught. This close, she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the faint scar on his jaw, the exhaustion he tried so hard to hide. This close, he wasn't a crime lord or a captor. He was just a man carrying more weight than anyone should have to bear alone. You can't save everyone, Adrian. No, but I can save you. His hand fell away. Even if you hate me for it. I don't hate you. The words surprised them both. I should. I want to, but I don't. Something flared in his expression, heat and hunger, and things she couldn't name. He stepped back abruptly, putting space between them. You should go to bed, Valeria. Why? Because if you don't, I'm going to do something we'll both regret. The raw honesty in his voice sent heat flooding through her. She should listen, should retreat, should remember that this man had bought her like property and kept her prisoner for weeks. Instead, she stepped closer. What if I don't want to go? Valeria, her name came out like a warning. You said I have agency, that I'm not property, that I make my own choices. Her heart hammered against her ribs. So I'm choosing to stay. For 3 heartbeats, he didn't move. Then he closed the distance between them, his hand sliding into her hair, his mouth finding hers with desperate intensity. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined. Not gentle or tentative, it was fierce and claiming and absolutely certain. His other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her against him, and Valeria felt herself responding with equal hunger. All the tension of the past weeks, all the fear and anger and confusion, it all translated into this moment of absolute clarity. She wanted him, despite everything, because of everything. He broke the kiss, his forehead resting against hers, both of them breathing hard. Tell me to stop. No. Valeria, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. She looked up at him, saw the war in his eyes. Don't take this choice away from me, too. Something broke in his expression. He kissed her again, slower this time, but no less intense. And when he lifted her into his arms, she didn't protest. He carried her upstairs to his room, laid her on his bed with a gentleness that contradicted his reputation for ruthlessness. Last chance, he whispered against her mouth. Tell me to stop and I will. Don't stop. He didn't. The world narrowed to touch and heat, and the revelation that captivity and desire could coexist in ways she'd never imagined. Adrian's hands were reverent and possessive at once, mapping her body like she was something precious he'd been waiting his whole life to claim. When he finally made her his completely, Valeria understood why people wrote poetry about moments that transcended language. This wasn't just physical, it was the breaking of every barrier between them, the acknowledgement that somewhere in the past weeks, the lines between captor and captive had blurred into something infinitely more complicated. Afterwards, she lay wrapped in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. His fingers traced patterns on her shoulder, absent and soothing. I should feel guilty, she whispered. Do you? No, I should, but I don't. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Sleep, Valeria. For the first time since her life had shattered, she did, dreamless and deep, safe in the arms of the most dangerous man she'd ever known. Dawn came too early. Valeria woke to find Adrian already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. Nothing, just... He brushed hair from her face. I'm trying to figure out what happens now. What do you want to happen? That's not the right question. He sat up, the sheet pooling at his waist. The right question is what's best for you. Cold dread settled in Valeria's stomach. Don't do this. Do what? Push me away. Tell me last night was a mistake. Give me the it's complicated speech. She sat up too, holding the sheet against her chest. I'm not a child, Adrian. I made a choice. A choice influenced by captivity and proximity and desire and trust and... She stopped herself before saying something dangerous, something that felt too much like love. His eyes searched hers. You can't trust me, Valeria. I'm keeping you prisoner. You're keeping me alive. It's the same thing right now. Then make it different. She reached for him, her hand on his jaw, forcing him to meet her eyes. Stop treating me like I'm made of glass. Stop assuming you know what's best for me. I chose you. Last night I chose you. You chose sex with your captor. That's not the same as choosing me. The words stung. Valeria dropped her hand, started to pull away, but Adrian caught her wrist. Wait, that came out wrong. He exhaled roughly. I'm not good at this. He gestured between them. Whatever this is. Then let's figure it out together. I don't know how to do that without hurting you. You're hurting me now by pushing me away. She turned her hand in his grip, threading their fingers together. I'm not asking for promises or labels. I'm just asking for honesty. Last night, did it mean something to you? The vulnerability in his expression was answer enough, but he spoke anyway. Yes, More than it should. Then stop fighting it. He pulled her close, kissing her with a desperation that felt like surrender. When he finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. "This is a terrible idea," he murmured. "Probably. You're going to hate me eventually." "Maybe. I'm still not letting you leave." "I know." He kissed her again, and Valeria let herself fall into it, into him, into this impossible situation that felt less like a cage with every passing moment. They spent the morning in bed, talking and touching and learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with captivity. Adrian told her about building his empire from nothing, about the violence and compromise required to survive in his world. She told him about her dreams of graduate school, of teaching literature, of a life that seemed impossibly distant now. "You could still do that," he said, his fingers trailing lazy patterns on her skin. "When this is over, when Ruiz is no longer a threat, you could go back to university. Would you let me?" He was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. Ask me again when the time comes." It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't a refusal either. Valeria took it as progress. They finally emerged from his room near noon, both starving, to find Rosa in the kitchen with a knowing smile and a spread of food that suggested she'd anticipated their hunger. "Señor Vega," she said innocently. "Miss Montoya. I hope you both slept well." Adrian's expression didn't change, but Valeria felt heat flood her cheeks. "Thank you, Rosa." "Of course, I'll be in the gardens if you need anything." She left with a smile that was definitely smug. "She knows," Valeria said. "Rosa knows everything that happens in this house." Adrian pulled out a chair for her. "She's also incredibly discreet." They ate in comfortable silence, and Valeria marveled at how natural this felt, how easy. As if they were a normal couple in a normal relationship, instead of captor and captive who'd somehow fallen into bed together. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then stood. "I need to take this. It's about Ruiz." The mention of the trafficker was like cold water. Valeria had almost forgotten the outside world, the danger, the reason she was here in the first place. Adrian stepped onto the terrace, speaking rapid Spanish. Through the glass, Valeria watched his expression grow darker, his posture more rigid. When he finally ended the call, he stood for a long moment staring out at the grounds before returning inside. "What is it?" she asked. "Ruiz made a move. Hit one of my warehouses in Barcelona. Killed 3 of my people." His voice was flat, controlled. "He's escalating. Because of me. Because he's losing, and he knows it. You're just the excuse." He pulled out his phone again, started typing. "I need to go to the city. Handle this personally." "When?" "Now." He looked up at her. "I could be gone for a few days. You'll be safe here. Rosa and the security team." "I don't want you to go." The words came out before she could stop them. Adrian's expression softened. "I don't want to go either. But this is my world, Valeria. My responsibility." He moved closer, cupped her face in his hands. "I'll come back. I promise. People keep dying because of me. Carlos. Now 3 more. No. People keep dying because Antonio Ruiz is a monster who thinks he can challenge me." His voice hardened. "This ends now. One way or another." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done weeks ago." He kissed her forehead, then her mouth, lingering as if memorizing the taste of her. "Stay here. Stay safe. Let me handle this." "Adrian, promise me, Valeria. Promise me you won't do anything stupid while I'm gone." She wanted to argue, wanted to demand he take her with him, or stay, or find some solution that didn't involve more violence. But she saw the determination in his eyes and knew it would be pointless. "I promise," she whispered. He kissed her one more time, hard and possessive and almost desperate. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing through the house, his car roaring to life outside. Valeria stood in the kitchen, listening to the sound of his departure fade into distance, and tried to ignore the cold dread settling in her chest. The first day without Adrian crawled by. Valeria tried to maintain her routine, riding midnight, swimming, reading, but everything felt hollow. She caught herself checking her phone constantly, even though he'd only texted once. Situation worse than expected. Maybe longer than I thought. Stay put. The second day, she woke to rain lashing against the windows and a restlessness she couldn't shake. She prowled through the house, ending up in Adrian's room, breathing in the scent of him that still clung to the sheets. Rosa found her there. "Miss Montoya, are you all right?" "I'm fine, just—" Valeria gestured helplessly. "I don't know what to do with myself." "Come help me in the kitchen. Cooking is good for restless hands and worried minds." Valeria followed her downstairs, and for the next few hours lost herself in the simple rhythm of chopping vegetables and kneading dough. Rosa talked about her own family, her years working for the Vegas, the estate's history. It was soothing and distracting and exactly what Valeria needed. "You love him," Rosa said suddenly, rolling out pastry dough. Valeria's hands stilled. "What?" "Señor Vega, you love him." Rosa looked up with kind eyes. "I've seen that look before. His mother had it when she looked at his father, despite everything." "I don't—" Valeria stopped. "Did she?" Was that what this tightness in her chest meant? This constant worry, this desperate hope for his safety? "It's complicated." "Love usually is," Rosa returned to her dough. "But it's also simple. You either do or you don't. Everything else is just noise." On the third day, Adrian called. His voice was rough with exhaustion. "Are you okay?" Valeria asked immediately. "I'm fine. Tired, but fine." A pause. "I miss you." The admission made her chest ache. "I miss you too. When are you coming home?" "Soon, tomorrow, if things go as planned." Another pause. "Ruiz and I are meeting. Neutral territory. We're going to end this." Fear spiked through her. "That's dangerous." "Everything I do is dangerous." She could hear the smile in his voice. "But I'm very good at staying alive." "Adrian, I'll be home soon. I promise." His voice softened. "Stay safe, Valeria. I need you safe." He ended the call before she could respond, and Valeria stood holding her phone, Rosa's words echoing in her mind. "You love him." Maybe she did. Maybe she'd been falling since that first night when he'd walked into the club like vengeance personified and claimed her as his. Maybe captivity and love weren't as mutually exclusive as she'd thought. The realization terrified her more than anything that had happened since her father sold her. The fourth day, Adrian didn't call, didn't text. Radio silence that stretched into evening and then night, and Valeria paced her room like a caged animal, imagination conjuring every terrible possibility. Near midnight, she heard vehicles on the gravel drive. Multiple vehicles. She ran to the window, saw SUVs pulling up, saw guards mobilizing, saw Adrian climbing out of the lead vehicle, his white shirt stained with what looked like blood, his face shadowed with exhaustion and something darker. Valeria flew down the stairs, met him in the foyer. His eyes found hers immediately, and something in his expression made her stop short. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "Not my blood." He stripped off his jacket, tossed it to a waiting guard. "It's done. Ruiz is dead." The words should have brought relief. Instead, Valeria felt only a strange hollowness. "You killed him." "I did what was necessary." His voice was flat, empty. "You're safe now. That's what matters." He started toward the stairs, but Valeria caught his arm. "Adrian, look at me." He did, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of whatever he'd done settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. "Come with me," she said softly. She led him upstairs to his bathroom, started running hot water in the massive tub. He stood in the doorway watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Taking care of you." She turned off the water, moved to him, started unbuttoning his blood-stained shirt. "Let me." He didn't resist as she undressed him, didn't speak as she guided him into the water. She climbed in behind him, fully clothed, not caring about the expensive fabric or her own comfort. She just wrapped her arms around him and held him, while he finally let himself break. He didn't cry, didn't rage, just sat in the hot water and let her hold him, and somehow that was worse than any display of emotion would have been. "I'm a monster," he whispered eventually. "No. You're a man who does monstrous things to protect what's his." She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. She tightened her arms around him. Monsters don't have nightmares about the people they couldn't save. Monsters don't build cages to keep the world out instead of keeping prisoners in. Monsters don't... She stopped, the words catching in her throat. Don't what? Don't make me fall in love with them. His entire body went rigid. He turned in the water to face her, searching her eyes with desperate intensity. What did you say? I love you. The words came easier the second time. I know I shouldn't. I know it's insane. I know you're a criminal and my captor and you've done terrible things. But I love you anyway. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. You're right, he said roughly. It is insane, and I don't deserve it, but... He kissed her softly. But I love you too. I've loved you since you threw money in my face and refused to be broken. Maybe before that. They stayed in the water until it went cold, holding each other, whispering confessions that felt like prayers. When they finally climbed out, Adrian carried her to bed and made love to her with a tenderness that shattered every remaining wall between them. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Valeria finally felt something that might have been hope. What happens now? She whispered against his chest. Now you're free. His arms tightened around her. Ruiz is dead. His organization is in chaos. Your father's debts are cleared. You can leave if you want. Valeria pushed up on her elbow to look at him. And if I don't want to leave? Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. Then you stay. Not as a prisoner. Not as a debt payment. Just stay. As what? As mine. He pulled her back down, his hand sliding into her hair. If you'll have me. She thought about everything that had brought them here. Her father's betrayal, the auction, the fear and anger and slow transformation from captive to something infinitely more complicated. She thought about Adrian's nightmares and his scars, and the way he'd killed to keep her safe. She thought about love that grew in darkness, in cages, in the space between captivity and choice. I'll stay, she whispered. I choose you. Again. Always. His kiss tasted like redemption. Morning broke soft and golden across the estate, filtering through the curtains of Adrian's bedroom where Valeria lay wrapped in his arms. She'd barely slept, too aware of the rise and fall of his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her palm. He'd finally fallen into deep sleep near dawn, the exhaustion of the past days claiming him at last. She studied his face in the gentle light, the hard lines softened by rest, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the faint scar she'd traced with her fingers a dozen times. This was the man who'd bought her like property and kept her prisoner. This was also the man she loved. The contradiction didn't make sense, but love rarely did. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're staring, he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. I'm memorizing. Why? In case this turns out to be a dream. She traced the line of his jaw. In case I wake up and you've changed your mind about everything you said last night. He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. Not a dream, and I don't change my mind about things that matter. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. You matter, Valeria. More than anything has mattered in a very long time. She wanted to stay in this moment forever, safe and wanted and loved. But reality had a way of intruding, and she heard her phone buzzing on the nightstand. She'd been ignoring it for days, letting calls go to voicemail, deleting messages unread. Now something made her reach for it. 17 missed calls, all from the same number, a number she recognized despite having deleted the contact weeks ago. Her father. Adrian must have seen something in her expression because he sat up. What is it? My father's been calling. She stared at the screen, a complicated mix of emotions churning in her chest. I haven't spoken to him since before. Do you want to? Did she? The man who'd raised her was also the man who'd sold her. The father who'd taught her to read and comforted her nightmares had gambled away her freedom without a second thought. What could he possibly say that would matter now? I don't know, she admitted. Adrian took the phone gently from her hands, looked at the call log, then handed it back. Your choice. But if you do talk to him, I want to be here. You don't trust me? I don't trust him. His jaw tightened. He sold you once. I won't let him manipulate you into anything else. The protectiveness in his voice was both comforting and slightly suffocating. Valeria set the phone aside. Not today. I'm not ready. But the intrusion had broken the spell of their morning. Adrian climbed out of bed, pulled on clothes with efficient movements, his mind clearly already shifting to business. She watched him transform from the vulnerable man who'd held her through the night into the controlled crime lord who ruled half of Spain. I have calls to make, he said, buttoning his shirt. Ruiz's death leaves a power vacuum. I need to make sure the right people fill it. He paused at the door, looked back at her. What will you do today? I don't know. Ride, maybe. Read. Exist. She pulled the sheet around herself. What am I supposed to do with freedom, Adrian? I've been in a cage for so long I'm not sure I remember how to live without bars. He crossed back to the bed, tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. Then learn. You have 40 acres and all the time in the world. Figure out who you are when you're not running or hiding or surviving. He kissed her softly. I'll be in my office if you need me. After he left, Valeria lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the strange new reality she'd woken into. She was free, truly free. The threat that had kept her prisoner was dead. She could leave if she wanted, walk out the gates, disappear into Madrid, reclaim some version of her old life. The thought made her chest tighten with panic rather than relief. She finally rose, showered, dressed in jeans and a soft sweater from the closet that had been stocked for her. Made her way downstairs to find Rosa in the kitchen, humming while she prepared what looked like enough food to feed an army. Miss Montoya, Rosa greeted her with a warm smile. Or should I say, simply Valeria now? You're no longer a guest, after all. Valeria is fine. She poured herself coffee from the pot Rosa indicated. What's all this for? Senor Vega is having people to the estate later, business associates who need to see that things are stable after... She paused delicately. After recent events. Right. Because Adrian had killed a rival crime lord, and now he needed to shore up his power base. Because the man she loved was still very much a criminal, and that world didn't disappear just because they'd confessed feelings in the dark. Does he want me to stay hidden? Valeria asked. Rosa's expression was thoughtful. He didn't say, but I think he'd want you to decide for yourself. You're not a secret anymore, Valeria. She hesitated. You're important to him. People will need to understand that. The implication sent a shiver through Valeria. Being important to Adrian Vega meant becoming a target, meant entering his world fully, with all its violence and complexity. It meant choosing not just the man, but the life that came with him. She spent the morning riding midnight through the estate's trails, pushing the horse faster than usual, seeking the clarity that came with movement and speed. But even the wind in her hair and the thunder of hooves couldn't silence the questions circling in her mind. What did it mean to love a monster? What did it mean to choose captivity, even when the cage door stood open? What did it mean to build a life in the shadow of violence and power? She returned to the stables wind-blown and no closer to answers. One of the guards approached as she dismounted, a new face she didn't recognize. Miss Montoya? Senor Vega asked me to inform you that his guests will arrive at 4. He'd like you to join them for drinks if you're comfortable. Not an order, an invitation, a choice. Valeria found herself back in her room, staring at the closet full of expensive clothes she'd never chosen. For weeks, someone else had dictated every aspect of her existence, what she wore, where she went, who she could see. Now she had choices, and somehow that felt more terrifying than captivity ever had. She pulled out a dress, simple, elegant, midnight blue like the one from that first night. Showered again, took time with her hair and minimal makeup. Looked at herself in the mirror and tried to see what Adrian saw. Someone worth saving, someone worth loving, someone strong enough to survive in his world. She made her way downstairs at 10 to 4, her heart hammering. Voices drifted from the formal living room, male voices speaking Spanish in tones that suggested business rather than pleasure. She paused in the hallway, suddenly uncertain. You look beautiful. She turned to find Adrian behind her, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a car. His eyes moved over her with an appreciation that made heat pool in her stomach. I wasn't sure if I should come, she admitted. I wasn't sure if you would. He offered his hand. But I'm glad you did. These men need to understand that you're under my protection, that anyone who threatens you threatens me. I'm not sure I'm ready to be a statement. You already are one. He brushed a kiss across her knuckles. The question is whether you're ready to own it. She thought about running, about retreating upstairs to safety and solitude. Then she thought about Rosa's words, "You love him," and made her choice. She took his hand. The room fell silent when they entered. 4 men rose from their seats, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed surprise. Valeria recognized the type immediately. Wealthy, powerful, dangerous, the kind of men who controlled cities from the shadows. "Gentlemen," Adrian said smoothly, his hand settling on Valeria's lower back. "This is Valeria Montoya. Valeria, these are some of my business associates. Carlos Mendoza handles our operations in Barcelona. Miguel Torres oversees the port facilities. Diego Ruiz manages distribution in the south, and Antonio Vargas coordinates our financial interests." Diego Ruiz, same last name as the trafficker Adrian had killed. Valeria's tension must have shown because Adrian's hand pressed slightly firmer against her back. "Diego is Antonio's younger brother," Adrian said calmly, "and he understands that his brother's death was the consequence of poor decisions and worse judgment." Diego nodded slowly, his eyes on Valeria, assessing and cold. "My brother was a fool. He thought he could challenge you and win. I'm smarter than that, Vega. I'm counting on it." Adrian guided Valeria to a seat beside his own. "Now, let's discuss the restructuring of Antonio's former territory." The next hour was a masterclass in power dynamics. Adrian orchestrated the division of a dead man's empire with the precision of a chess master, making it clear that while he was open to input, the final decisions were his alone. The other men deferred to him with a mix of respect and fear that spoke volumes about his position in this world. Valeria sat quietly, sipping wine she barely tasted, absorbing the reality of what Adrian was. Not just a businessman who dabbled in crime. A true power broker who controlled vast criminal operations across Spain, who commanded loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure, who had killed his rival and was now dividing the spoils without a hint of remorse. And yet when he looked at her, brief glances during pauses in conversation, she saw softness there, concern, love even, poorly hidden beneath his professional mask. "Your opinion, Miss Montoya?" She startled, realizing Miguel Torres had asked her something. "I'm sorry?" "I was just saying that Ruiz's trafficking operations should be shut down entirely. No profit is worth that kind of moral stain, but Carlos believes we should simply redirect them to more legitimate labor markets. What do you think?" Every eye in the room was on her. This was a test, she realized. A way for these men to assess whether she was just decoration or something more. Valeria met Miguel's gaze steadily. "I think anyone who profits from human trafficking deserves the same fate Antonio Ruiz received. And I think if Senor Vega allowed those operations to continue under his control, I'd reconsider my opinion of him." Silence. Then Adrian laughed, a genuine sound of surprise and pleasure. "There's your answer, gentlemen. The trafficking operations are terminated effective immediately. Miguel, I want those facilities repurposed or sold within the month. Any questions?" There were none. The meeting continued, but something had shifted. The men no longer looked at Valeria as a curiosity or a weakness. They looked at her as someone who mattered, someone with influence. When the men finally left near 7, Adrian closed the door behind them and turned to her with an expression of amused admiration. "That was dangerous," he said. "What was?" "Challenging me in front of them, putting me in a position where I had to choose between business and principle." "Did I?" She moved closer, emboldened by wine and adrenaline. "Or did I just say out loud what you were already thinking?" "Maybe." He pulled her against him. "Or maybe you're becoming more like me than either of us realized." The thought should have horrified her. Instead, it felt almost like acceptance. She was changing, had been changing since that first night, becoming someone who could exist in Adrian's world without breaking. Someone who could love a monster and still maintain her own moral compass. "I'm not like you," she said softly. "But I'm not who I was either." "No." He kissed her forehead. You're something better. You're the conscience I didn't know I needed. They ate dinner on the terrace, just the two of them, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Rosa had outdone herself, fresh pasta with truffle sauce, grilled vegetables from the greenhouse, wine that tasted like liquid gold. It should have been romantic, it was romantic, but beneath the surface, Valeria felt the weight of questions that needed asking. "What happens now?" she said finally, setting down her fork. "Really, beyond the declarations and the promises, what does my life actually look like?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, his wine glass turning slowly in his hand. "That depends on what you want." "Don't put this all on me." "I'm not. But you have choices now, real choices." He set down his glass, leaned forward. "You could go back to university, finish your degree. I'd pay for it, make sure you're safe, give you space to rebuild your life. You could live in the city, at the penthouse, or somewhere else if you prefer. We could—" He hesitated. "We could see each other when schedules allow. Keep this separate from the rest of my world." That sounds like you're describing an affair. I'm describing options, alternatives to— He gestured around them. "To this, to being at the center of everything I am." "And what do you want?" His eyes met hers with devastating honesty. "I want you here, in my home, in my life, fully and completely. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know you're safe. I want you at my table when I have business. I want—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "I want things I have no right to ask for." "Like what?" "Like forever. Like marriage. Like building something real in the middle of all this darkness." He reached across the table, took her hand. "But I won't trap you again, Valeria. I won't make you choose me because you're afraid or obligated, or because you think you have no other options. If you stay, I need it to be because you want to, because you choose this life with clear eyes and full understanding of what it means." Valeria's heart hammered against her ribs. Marriage. Forever. A life fully entwined with his world of violence and power and moral complexity. It should terrify her. It did terrify her. But it also felt inevitable, like everything since that night in the club had been leading to this moment of choice. "I need time," she said finally. "Not because I don't love you, but because I need to figure out who I am outside of fear and captivity before I can choose who I want to be with you." Pain flickered across his face, quickly hidden. "How much time?" "I don't know. Weeks, maybe. I need—" She struggled to articulate it. "I need to know I'm choosing you because I want you, not because I've been conditioned to depend on you. Does that make sense?" "Yes." The word came out rough. "More than you know." "I won't leave the estate," she added quickly. "I'm not running. I just need space to breathe, to think, to figure out what I want my life to look like." He nodded slowly, releasing her hand. "Then take it. The estate is yours. He stood abruptly. "I'll give you space. I have business in Madrid anyway. I can stay at the penthouse for a while." "Adrian, I'm not asking you to leave your own home. You need clarity. You won't get it with me here." He moved to the terrace railing, his back to her, shoulders rigid. "I've been controlling your life for weeks. The least I can do is give you the freedom to control it yourself." Valeria stood, moved to stand beside him. The sun had fully set now, leaving them in the soft glow of the terrace lights. "I do love you. You know that, right?" "I know." He didn't look at her. "But love and choice aren't always the same thing. You taught me that." He left the next morning before dawn. Valeria woke to find a note on the pillow beside her, his handwriting precise and controlled even in this. "Take all the time you need. The estate, the resources, everything is yours. Rosa will make sure you have whatever you want. I'll check in periodically to make sure you're safe, but I won't pressure you. When you're ready, if you're ready, I'll be waiting. Yours, Adrian." She read it 3 times, tracing the letters with her fingertip, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't quite name. Then she climbed out of bed and began the strange process of learning to live without walls. The first week was disorienting. She woke when she wanted, ate what she wanted, spent her days however she chose, rode midnight for hours, swam laps until her muscles screamed, read entire books in single sittings, helped Rosa in the gardens, and learned the names of plants she'd never known existed. She also avoided the phone that buzzed periodically with her father's calls. Whatever he wanted, She wasn't ready to hear it. Adrian kept his word. He texted occasionally, brief messages checking that she was okay, never demanding responses. She replied sometimes, short affirmations that she was fine, that she was thinking, that she appreciated his patience. He never pushed for more. The second week, restlessness set in. Freedom was wonderful, but it was also empty. She found herself wandering through the estate aimlessly, looking for purpose and finding only time to fill. She started helping Rosa more actively, learning to cook traditional Spanish dishes, finding satisfaction in creating something tangible. "You're not happy," Rosa observed one afternoon as they prepared dinner Valeria would eat alone. "I'm fine." "You're bored, lonely, lost." Rosa's eyes were kind but direct. "Freedom without purpose is just another kind of prison, Valeria." "I don't know what my purpose is supposed to be." "Then figure it out. You have resources most people never dream of. Use them." Rosa handed her a knife, gestured to vegetables that needed chopping. "What did you love before all this happened?" "Literature, teaching. I wanted to help people understand stories, see themselves in characters, find meaning in words." "So do that." "How?" "I can't go back to university. Even if Adrian pays for it, everyone would know who I am, what I am, the girl who was sold, the crime lords—" She stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence. "The crime lords what?" Rosa asked gently. "Prisoner? Lover? Future wife?" "I don't know." Then maybe that's what you need to figure out." Rosa covered the vegetables, turned to face Valeria fully. "I'm going to tell you something about Senor Vega, something I've never told anyone else." Valeria set down her knife, listening. When his mother died, he was 12 years old. His father immediately started gambling away everything they had left. Within 6 months, they'd lost the house, the cars, everything. Adrian and Elena lived in a tiny apartment in a terrible neighborhood. Adrian worked 3 jobs to keep them fed while still going to school. Rosa's voice was soft but firm. When Elena was taken, when he found her body, something in him broke. He decided the world was cruel and random, and the only safety was power. So he built an empire from nothing, became the kind of man no one could hurt, the kind of man who could protect the people he loved. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you think loving him means accepting his darkness. But his darkness exists because he loves too much. Because he couldn't save the people who mattered." Rosa touched Valeria's hand. "You want purpose? Be the person who shows him there's more to life than just surviving. Be the light that makes all that power mean something beyond fear." The words settled into Valeria's chest like seeds waiting to grow. That night, alone in the too large bed, she finally let herself examine what she really wanted. She wanted Adrian. That part was clear. She loved him with an intensity that still surprised her. But more than that, she wanted to matter, to build something meaningful, to use the resources and freedom she'd been given to create change. An idea began to form. Tentative at first, then stronger. The next morning, she called Adrian for the first time since he'd left. "Valeria." His voice was rough, like he'd been sleeping. "Is everything okay?" "I need to talk to you. Can you come to the estate?" A pause. "When?" "Today. As soon as possible. I'll be there in 2 hours." She spent those 2 hours pacing, refining her thoughts, building courage. When she heard his car on the gravel drive, her heart leaped into her throat. He looked tired when he walked through the door, shadows under his eyes, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled, like he hadn't been sleeping any better than she had. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "Did something happen?" "Nothing's wrong. I've been thinking. A lot. And I have something to propose." They settled in the library, the familiar space feeling both comforting and charged with tension. Adrian sat across from her, his attention absolute. "I love you," Valeria began. "I need you to understand that first. This isn't about doubt. It's about building something real." "Okay." She took a breath. "You asked what I wanted to do with my life. I want to teach. I want to help people understand literature, find themselves in stories, but I can't go back to a traditional university. I'm too visible now, too connected to your world. So I want to start my own program." His expression shifted to interest. "What kind of program?" "An educational foundation Free literature classes for people who can't afford university. Women especially. Women from difficult circumstances like I was. Like your sister was. She leaned forward, warming to the idea as she spoke. We could use one of your properties in the city, hire real professors, offer real credits that could transfer to universities, create opportunities for people who've had their choices stolen. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching her face. You want to turn my resources toward education. I want to turn your power toward something good, something that helps instead of hurts. She reached for his hand. You said I was your conscience. Let me be that. Let me build something beautiful in the middle of all your darkness. It would be expensive. You can afford it. It would make you visible, a target. I'm already a target. At least this way, I'd be a target doing something that matters. He stood, moved to the window, stared out at the grounds. Valeria waited, her heart hammering, afraid she'd pushed too far. My mother wanted to start a scholarship program, he said finally, before she got sick. She wanted to help students who couldn't afford university. My father convinced her they couldn't spare the money. 3 months later, he'd gambled away twice what it would have cost. He turned back to face her. I always regretted that she never got to do it. Then let's do it now, for her, for Elena, for every woman whose choices get stolen by men who see them as property. Adrian crossed the room, pulled her to her feet, framed her face with his hands. You're extraordinary. Do you know that? I'm just trying to find meaning in the mess. No, you're trying to create light in the darkness. It's not the same thing. He kissed her softly. Yes. Build your foundation. I'll fund it, protect it, give you whatever resources you need, on one condition. What? You come home. Really home. Stop hiding in uncertainty and choose me. Choose this life. Choose us. His eyes were vulnerable in a way she'd rarely seen. I know you need to be sure. I know you need to feel like it's your choice. But Valeria, I'm dying without you. These 2 weeks have been... He stopped, jaw tightening. I need you. Not as a prisoner, not as an obligation, but as a partner. As the person who makes all of this mean something. Valeria felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I choose you. I've been choosing you since the moment you walked into that club. I just needed to know I could stand on my own before I chose to stand beside you. And can you? Yes. She pulled his mouth to hers. Yes, I can. And I choose you anyway. They sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted like hope and homecoming. When they finally broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he whispered. What? Marry me. Not because you owe me. Not because I'm keeping you safe. But because you love me and I love you, and we can build something beautiful together. He pulled back to meet her eyes. Marry me, and help me become the man my mother hoped I'd be. The man Elena would have been proud of. The man you deserve. Valeria's throat was too tight to speak. She nodded instead, tears streaming freely now. I need words, Valeria. Yes. Her voice broke on the word. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it. He lifted her into his arms, carried her upstairs to the bedroom they'd both been avoiding, and showed her exactly how much those 2 weeks apart had cost them both. And later, wrapped in sheets and satisfaction and the strange peace that came with finally choosing your own chains, Valeria understood what Rosa had meant. Love was both prison and freedom. Captivity and choice. Darkness and light existing in the same space, making something new from the contradiction. She'd been sold into slavery and found love. Been trapped in a cage and discovered wings. Been claimed as property and chosen to be a partner instead. The story that had started in darkness was finally beginning to see dawn. The engagement ring appeared 2 days later. A single perfect diamond set in platinum. Simple and elegant and completely unexpected. Adrian slipped it onto her finger over breakfast on the terrace, his hand steady even though Valeria could see the vulnerability in his eyes. It was my mother's, he said quietly. The only thing my father didn't manage to sell or gamble away. I've been carrying it for 15 years, waiting for someone who deserved it. Valeria stared at the ring catching morning light, her throat tight. Adrian, you don't have to wear it if you'd prefer something else. Something you chose. I just wanted you to know that you're not just someone I'm trying to possess. Your family. The family I thought I'd lost forever. She kissed him instead of answering, tasting coffee and promise and the salt of tears she wasn't sure belonged to her or him. When they finally broke apart, she held up her hand, watching the diamond sparkle. I love it, she whispered, and I love you. They spent the morning planning, not a wedding, not yet, but the foundation that would become Valeria's purpose. Adrian made calls, sent messages, set wheels in motion with the efficiency of a man who commanded empires. By noon, he'd secured a building in central Madrid, arranged meetings with education consultants, and started the legal paperwork for a non-profit organization. What should we call it? He asked, making notes on his tablet. Valeria thought about Elena, about Carlos and the 3 men who'd died in Barcelona, about every woman who'd stood on that auction platform and hadn't been saved. The Elena Foundation, for women's education and empowerment. Adrian's hand stilled on the screen. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with emotion he didn't try to hide. She would have loved that. She would have loved you. I wish I could have known her. She was a lot like you, stubborn, brilliant, refused to accept the world as it was instead of how it should be. He set down the tablet, reached for Valeria's hand. She would have told me I was an idiot for keeping you prisoner. Then she would have told you that you were an idiot for falling in love with me anyway. She would have been right on both counts. Probably. He brought her hand to his lips. But I'm grateful for your particular brand of idiocy. The foundation became real with startling speed. Within a week, contractors were renovating the building Adrian had purchased. Within 2 weeks, Valeria was interviewing professors and designing curriculum. Within 3 weeks, the first advertisements went out. Free literature and humanities courses for women, no prerequisites required, no questions asked about background or circumstances. Valeria threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised her. She spent long days in the city, meeting with educators, reviewing applications from potential students, making decisions about everything from textbook selection to classroom layouts. Adrian provided resources and protection. His security team shadowed her everywhere, subtle but present. But he never tried to control the foundation itself. That was hers, and he respected the boundary. They fell into a rhythm. Mornings at the estate, working side by side in comfortable silence. Afternoons in the city, Valeria at the foundation while Adrian handled his various business interests. Evenings back home, sharing dinner and conversation, and the quiet intimacy of 2 people building a life together. It should have been perfect. It almost was. But Valeria's phone still buzzed with her father's calls, and she still couldn't bring herself to answer. You need to deal with that, Rosa said one evening, finding Valeria staring at yet another missed call notification. I know. He's your father. Whatever else he is, whatever he's done, he's still your father. He sold me, Rosa. He handed me over to strangers to settle his gambling debts. What could he possibly say that would make that acceptable? Maybe nothing, but you'll never know if you don't let him try. Rosa's expression was gentle but firm, and you'll never have peace if you don't get closure. That night, Valeria showed Adrian the call log. 43 missed calls over the past month. Her father was nothing if not persistent. What do you want to do? Adrian asked carefully. I don't know. Part of me wants to delete his number and pretend he doesn't exist. Part of me... She stopped, the admission painful. Part of me still remembers the father he used to be, before the gambling, before everything fell apart. He's in a halfway house in the Eastern District, Adrian said. Clean for 6 weeks, according to my people. Working at a warehouse. Trying to rebuild. You've been keeping tabs on him. I keep tabs on everything that might affect you. He touched her cheek. If you want to see him, I'll arrange it. Somewhere safe. Somewhere you're in control. And if I don't want to see him, then we delete his number and move on with our lives. His eyes held hers. This is your choice, Valeria. I meant what I said about not controlling you anymore. She thought about it for 2 days, the question circling her mind during foundation work and quiet evenings alike. Finally, she made her decision. Set up a meeting, but I want you there, and I want it to be somewhere I can leave if I need to. Adrian arranged for them to meet at a cafe near the foundation, public, neutral, with security positioned discreetly throughout. Valeria dressed carefully that morning, choosing professional clothes that made her feel armored and capable. The woman her father had sold wore fear and desperation. The woman who would face him wore strength. He was already there when they arrived, sitting at a corner table with a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. Valeria's first thought was how much he'd aged. Gray threaded heavily through his dark hair, lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished by shame and time. He stood when he saw her, his hands shaking. "Valeria, you came. I wasn't sure you'd—" His words tumbled over each other, desperate and unpolished. "Sit down, Vicente," Adrian said coldly, taking the chair beside Valeria. His presence was a wall between her and her father, protective and unmistakably possessive. Her father sat heavily, his eyes moving between them. "Senor Vega, I want to thank you for taking care of my daughter, for keeping her safe." "Don't." Valeria's voice came out harder than she'd intended. "Don't thank him for cleaning up your mess. Don't pretend you did me any favors." Vicente flinched. "You're right. You're absolutely right. I have no excuse for what I did. No justification. He swallowed hard. "I was sick. The gambling, it was like a disease. I couldn't stop. Every time I lost, I told myself the next bet would fix everything. And then I owed people, dangerous people, and they wanted payment, and I had nothing left except—" He stopped, unable to finish. "Except me," Valeria finished flatly. "You had me, your daughter, so you sold me to the highest bidder. It wasn't like that. Senor Vega, he promised me you'd be safe, that he'd protect you. When I heard about the other men who were bidding, I knew I had to make sure you went to someone who wouldn't—" Tears streaked down his face. "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know nothing I say will ever be enough. But I'm sorry, Valeria. I'm so sorry." Adrian's hand found Valeria's under the table, grounding her. She wanted to rage at her father, wanted to make him understand the terror of that night, the weeks of captivity, the way he'd shattered her entire world with his selfishness. But looking at him now, broken and pathetic and drowning in regret, she found she had no more anger left to give. "I don't forgive you," she said quietly. "I don't know if I ever will. You took away my choices, my freedom, my life. You destroyed everything I'd built because you couldn't control yourself. I know, but I'm not going to let you destroy me anymore." She leaned forward, holding his gaze. "I'm building something new, something good. I'm engaged to a man who loves me and respects me. I'm starting a foundation to help women like me, women whose fathers or husbands or circumstances trap them, and I'm going to do all of it without you." Vicente's face crumpled. "I understand. I don't deserve to be part of your life. I needed you to know that I'm trying to get better. I'm in recovery. I haven't gambled in 6 weeks. I have a sponsor. I'm working. I'm trying to become the father you deserved." "That's good," Valeria said. "I hope you succeed. But you need to do it for yourself, not for me, because I'm done waiting for you to be someone you're not." She stood, and Adrian stood with her. Her father remained seated, tears streaming down his face. "Can I—" Vicente's voice broke. "Vicente's Paz, can I at least know you're happy, that you're okay?" Valeria looked at Adrian, at the man who'd bought her and imprisoned her and somehow loved her into freedom. Then she looked back at her father. "I'm more than okay," she said. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." They left him there, and Valeria didn't look back. In the car, Adrian pulled her against him, his arms solid and safe. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free." And she was. The weight she'd been carrying, the need for her father's explanation, his apology, his redemption, lifted. He was just a man now, flawed and broken and trying to rebuild. But he wasn't her responsibility anymore. "I'm finally free." The foundation opened 6 weeks later with 12 students in the first cohort, women ranging from 19 to 57, all with stories that echoed Valeria's own themes of loss and survival and stubborn hope. She stood before them on the first day of class, her heart full, and introduced herself not as a victim, but as someone who understood their journey. "Literature saved my life," she told them. "Not literally. The credit goes to someone else. But it gave me a framework for understanding suffering and transformation. It showed me that every story, no matter how dark, has the potential for redemption. She caught Adrian's eye where he stood in the back of the classroom, having insisted on attending the opening day. He'd been nervous about being visible, about attaching his name to something so public, but he'd come anyway, because this mattered to her. The foundation flourished. Word spread through Madrid's underground networks of women helping women, of a place that asked no questions about your past and offered real education toward a future. By the second month, they had a waiting list. By the third month, Adrian was already looking at properties for a second location. "You're going to put me out of business," he joked one evening, reviewing the foundation's growing budget. "All my profits are going into books and professors." "Good," Valeria said, curling against him on the couch. "Let my empire of literature consume your empire of crime. Is that the goal? Convert me into a legitimate businessman through sheer force of education? Would that be so terrible?" He was quiet for a moment, his hand stroking her hair. "I've been thinking about that, actually, about what happens when we have children, what kind of man I want to be for them." Valeria's breath caught. They talked about marriage, but not beyond it, not about the future they'd build together. "Children? Unless you don't want them. I know we haven't. I'm probably getting ahead of myself." He sounded uncertain in a way that was rare for him. "No, I want them. Someday. I just didn't know you'd thought about it. I think about it constantly." His arms tightened around her. "I think about teaching them to ride Midnight's descendants, about your mother filling this house with books and art, about being the father mine never was." He paused. "About whether I can be that man while still being who I am." "You're already becoming that man," Valeria said softly. "The foundation, the changes you've been making to your business, shutting down the trafficking operations, focusing on legitimate investments, you're choosing different every day. Because of you. Because of us." She turned to face him fully. "We're building something better together, something your sister would be proud of, something our children will be proud of." He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promises about futures they'd create together. The wedding was planned for autumn, on the estate's grounds, small and intimate. Just Rosa and the household staff, a few of Adrian's most trusted associates, and the women from the foundation's first cohort who'd become something like family to Valeria. No elaborate ceremony, no media circus, just two people who'd found each other in darkness, choosing to build a life in light. But 3 weeks before the wedding, Valeria's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Montoya?" A woman's voice, professional and careful. "This is Dr. Reyes from Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling about Vicente Montoya. You're listed as his emergency contact." Valeria's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "He was brought in 2 hours ago. Cardiac event. He's stable now, but he's been asking for you. I know that's a lot to ask, but if you're able to come, I'll be there." She ended the call, her hands shaking. Adrian found her standing in their bedroom, staring at nothing. "What's wrong?" She told him. He immediately called for his car, his security team, arrangements for protection at the hospital. But Valeria stopped him. "I need to do this alone," she said. "Valeria, I know it's a risk. I know you want to protect me. But this is my father, and I need to face this without bodyguards and walls between us." She took his hands. "Please, trust me." He looked like he wanted to argue. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll drive you. I'll wait outside the room, but I'm not letting you walk into a hospital alone." It was a compromise she could accept. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fear. Valeria followed the nurse through sterile corridors to a private room where her father lay connected to monitors and IVs. He looked impossibly fragile, his skin gray against white sheets. His eyes opened when she entered. "Valeria, you came." The hospital called. She sat in the chair beside his bed, maintaining distance. "What happened?" "Heart attack. The doctor says I'm lucky I made it." He smiled weakly. "Funny definition of luck." "Are you going to be okay?" "Physically, probably. They want to do surgery, bypass. I don't know if I can afford it, but they say there are programs." He stopped himself. "I'm sorry. You didn't come here to solve my problems." "No, I didn't." Valeria studied him, this man who'd shaped her childhood and destroyed her young adulthood. "Why did you list me as your emergency contact? After everything?" Because you're the only family I have left. And because, his voice caught, because even if you hate me, even if you never forgive me, you're still my daughter. You're still the best thing I ever did with my life, even if I almost ruined yours. Tears burned in Valeria's eyes. I don't hate you. I did for a while, but I don't anymore. I don't know how to have you in my life. I'm not asking for that. I know I don't deserve it. He reached for her hand, then stopped, uncertain. I just needed you to know that I'm proud of you. What you're building, the foundation. I see the articles about it, about the women you're helping. You're doing what I couldn't. You're making something good out of all the bad. Valeria let him take her hand. His skin was cold, his grip weak. The foundation is for women like me, women whose families failed them. It's not about forgiveness, it's about moving forward. I know, and that's why I'm proud. He closed his eyes. I'm going to beat this. The gambling, I mean. I'm going to get healthy, not because I think it'll bring you back, but because you deserve a father who's worth having, even if you never choose to have one. They sat in silence for a while, Valeria holding her father's hand, both of them processing years of damage and the tentative beginning of something that might one day resemble peace. I'm getting married, Valeria said finally, in 3 weeks. To Adrian Vega. Vicente's eyes opened. He stopped, processing. Are you happy? Yes. Very. Does he treat you well? Valeria thought about Adrian waiting outside, giving her space while wanting desperately to protect her. About the foundation he funded without question. About the way he held her through nightmares and built dreams with her in daylight. Better than I ever imagined possible. Then I'm happy for you. Vicente's voice was sincere. Even if I wasn't the father who got to walk you down the aisle, even if I'm not part of your new life, I'm happy you found someone who knows your worth. Valeria squeezed his hand. Get the surgery. Get healthy. Keep going to recovery. And maybe... She paused, uncertain if she was making a mistake. Maybe someday, when you've proven you're serious about changing, we can try. Not father and daughter, but 2 people who share history and want something different for the future. I'd like that. Tears slipped down his temples. I'd like that very much. She stayed another hour talking about nothing important, the weather, his job at the warehouse, the foundation's upcoming expansion, building small bridges over vast canyons of hurt. When she finally left, Adrian was exactly where he'd said he'd be, standing outside the room, his face tight with the effort of not interfering. How is he? Adrian asked. Broken. Getting better. Still my father. She leaned into him, exhausted. Take me home. They drove back to the estate in comfortable silence, Adrian's hand warm in hers. That night, wrapped in his arms, Valeria told him everything. The conversation, the tentative olive branch, her uncertainty about whether forgiveness was possible or even necessary. You don't have to forgive him, Adrian said. You don't owe him anything. But if you want to try, if you think it might bring you peace, I support that. Even though he's the reason we met, even though without him, none of this would have happened. I'm grateful for where we ended up. I'm not grateful for what it took to get here. He kissed her forehead. Your father's redemption is his journey, not yours. You get to decide how much or how little you want to be part of it. The wedding arrived with autumn colors painting the estate's grounds gold and crimson. Rosa had outdone herself with flowers and decorations that transformed the gardens into something magical. The foundation's first cohort of students had insisted on helping, turning the preparation into a celebration of community and hope. Valeria dressed in her mother's wedding dress, a simple ivory gown that Rosa had helped her find in storage at her father's old apartment, one of the few things not sold or lost. It fit perfectly with minor alterations, and wearing it felt like carrying her mother's blessing into this new chapter. Rosa helped her with the final touches, her eyes bright with tears. You look beautiful, like a bride, like yourself. I'm terrified, Valeria admitted, not of marrying Adrian, but of all of it, the future, what comes next. That's what makes it real. Rosa adjusted the simple veil. You're not being forced. You're choosing. That's worth being scared about. There was no processional, no traditional ceremony. Valeria simply walked through the gardens to where Adrian waited under an arch covered in late-blooming roses. He wore a dark suit, simple and elegant, but his eyes held storms of emotion when he saw her. The officiant kept it brief, just the essential words about commitment and choice and building a future together. When it came time for vows, Adrian went first. "I'm not good with words," he began, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "I'm better with actions, with control, with making sure the world bends to my will. But you taught me that some things can't be controlled, that love is about surrender, not possession, that the strongest cages are the ones we build for ourselves." He took both her hands. "I vow to never trap you again, to give you freedom even when it terrifies me, to build a life with you, not for you, to be worthy of the trust you've placed in a man who started as your captor and somehow became your choice." Valeria's tears were falling freely now. When her turn came, she had to clear her throat twice before she could speak. "I don't have pretty words either," she said. "Just truth. When I met you, I thought you were my nightmare, the monster who'd stolen my life. I hated you, feared you, wanted to escape you." She smiled through her tears. "And then somewhere along the way, you became my safety, my home. The person who saw me not as a victim, but as someone strong enough to survive in your world and still maintain my own light." She squeezed his hands. "I vow to be that light, to challenge you when you need it, to support you when you're lost, to build something beautiful with you in all the darkness we've survived, to choose you every day for the rest of our lives." The officiant pronounced them married, and Adrian kissed her like he was sealing a vow that went deeper than words. The small gathering erupted in applause, and for the first time since that night in the club, Valeria felt completely, perfectly free. The reception was held on the same terrace where they'd shared so many dinners, the tables decorated with candles and flowers and warmth. Valeria danced with Adrian to music that spoke of new beginnings, surrounded by the women from her foundation and the staff who'd become family and the man who'd somehow become her everything. "Happy?" Adrian murmured against her ear as they swayed. Deliriously. She pulled back to look at him. "Are you?" "I didn't know I could be. Before you." His hand tightened on her waist. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Purpose. A reason to be better than I was. You gave me the same thing, just in a much more complicated package." He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "I suppose buying someone at an auction is pretty complicated as far as courtship goes." "Worst meet cute in history," Valeria agreed, "but somehow it worked." They danced until the stars came out, until the candles burned low, until the guests departed and it was just the two of them on the terrace with Rosa clearing glasses and pretending not to smile at their happiness. That night, in their bedroom, not his, not the guest room, but truly theirs, Adrian made love to his wife with a reverence that spoke of gratitude and wonder, an absolute certainty that they'd found something rare and precious in the wreckage of their pasts. Afterward, Valeria lay wrapped in his arms, watching moonlight paint patterns on the ceiling, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. From auction block to partnership, from captivity to choice, from fear to love. "Tell me about our future," she whispered. "What do you see?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I see the foundation expanding to other cities. I see you teaching, inspiring, creating change. I see me slowly transitioning out of the darker parts of my business into something legitimate, something our children won't be ashamed of." "How many children?" "As many as you want. 2, 3, a dozen." She felt his smile against her hair. "I see this estate filled with noise and chaos and love. I see us growing old together, telling our grandchildren edited versions of how we met. Very edited. Extremely edited." His arms tightened around her. "I see a life where the darkness that brought us together becomes just a chapter in a much longer, brighter story." Valeria turned in his arms to face him. "I see that too. All of it. They fell asleep like that, wrapped together, dreaming separate dreams that were slowly becoming one shared vision of the future. The months that followed were a revelation in how life could simply be good. The foundation opened its second location, then a third. Valeria's students went on to university programs, to jobs, to lives they'd never imagined possible. She taught with passion and purpose, finding joy in watching others discover their own strength through literature. Adrian made good on his promise to change. He systematically shut down the most violent aspects of his organization, reinvesting in legitimate businesses, real estate development, technology ventures, renewable energy. It was slow work, and there were still parts of his empire that existed in moral gray areas, but the trajectory was clear. He was building something their future children could inherit with pride. Her father recovered from his surgery and stayed sober. They met occasionally for coffee, brief meetings where they slowly rebuilt something that wasn't quite trust but might become it eventually. Valeria invited him to the foundation's one-year anniversary celebration, and he came, staying in the back, crying quietly when she spoke about second chances and choosing your own redemption. On a quiet evening 8 months after the wedding, Valeria stood on the terrace watching the sunset paint the grounds in shades of gold and amber. She felt Adrian's arms wrap around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts," he murmured. "I was thinking about that night, in the club, how terrified I was." She leaned back against him. "How if someone had told me then that I'd end up here, married to you, happy, I would have thought they were insane. Would you have believed them if they'd told you I'd become obsessed with educational nonprofits and spend my evenings reviewing curriculum proposals?" "Absolutely not." She turned in his arms to face him. "But I'm glad that's who you became, who we became together." "I have something to tell you," he said, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "The last of Ruiz's old operations are being dismantled. As of tomorrow, I'm officially out of human trafficking, drug distribution, and violent enforcement. My lawyers have been working for months to clean up the legal structures. We're going legitimate, fully legitimate." Valeria's heart stuttered. "Adrian, are you serious?" "Completely. It's going to take time to restructure everything, and there will still be risk. People who don't like the changes, competitors who see it as weakness. But I meant what I said. I want to be the man you deserve, the father our children deserve." He cupped her face in his hands. "So I'm walking away from the darkness, for good." She kissed him then, pouring every ounce of love and pride and hope into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she had news of her own. "I have something to tell you too," she said, her hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "We're going to need to accelerate those plans about filling the estate with noise and chaos." It took him a moment. Then his eyes went wide. We're pregnant. About 6 weeks. I found out yesterday." She smiled at his stunned expression. "Surprise?" He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around, his laughter bright and disbelieving and full of pure joy. When he set her down, his hands immediately went to her stomach, reverent and careful. "A baby," he whispered. "We're having a baby." "We are." Valeria covered his hands with hers. "Are you ready for this?" "No, absolutely not. I'm terrified." He looked up at her, his eyes bright with tears. "But I've never been more ready for anything in my life." They stood together on the terrace as night fell, talking about nurseries and names and the future they'd build for this child who would know only love and choice and the kind of safety that came from being cherished, not controlled. 9 months later, Valeria gave birth to a daughter with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through to the soul. They named her Elena, for the sister who'd been lost and the hope that had been found. Adrian held his daughter with shaking hands and wept openly, promising her a world better than the one he'd known. The estate that had been Valeria's cage became Elena's playground. She learned to walk on grounds where her mother had once paced like a prisoner, learned to ride the descendants of midnight in stables that had once been Valeria's only refuge, grew up surrounded by books from the library where her parents had first shared their broken pieces. The foundation continued to grow, expanding to 12 cities across Spain and helping hundreds of women rebuild their lives. Valeria taught with Elena often in the classroom, showing her daughter that strength came in many forms and that every woman deserved the chance to write her own story. Adrian became the businessman his mother had hoped he'd be, powerful but principled, wealthy but generous, respected without being feared. He established scholarships in Elena's name, funded women's shelters, used his influence to push for policy changes that protected the vulnerable. The criminal empire he'd built transformed into something that actually did good in the world. 5 years after Elena, they had a son, then another daughter. The estate filled with the noise and chaos and overwhelming love Adrian had envisioned. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the world was peaceful, Valeria and Adrian would stand on the terrace where they'd shared so many moments and marvel at the life they'd built from such dark beginnings. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked one such evening, his arms around her waist, their children's laughter still echoing in memory. "The way we started? What you had to survive to get here?" Valeria thought about it seriously, about the fear and anger and gradual transformation from captive to partner, about the father who'd failed her and the man who'd saved her in the most complicated way possible, about the foundation built from pain and the family created from choice. "I regret what I lost," she said finally, "the innocence, the simple path my life might have taken, but I don't regret where I ended up. I don't regret you. I don't regret us. Even though I bought you like property? Even though you bought me like property." She turned in his arms, cupping his face. "Because you also gave me the choice to leave, and every day since I've chosen to stay. Not because I'm trapped, but because this life we've built, messy and complicated and born from darkness, it's mine, ours, and I wouldn't trade it for anything." He kissed her as the sun set over the grounds, where their love had been forged in fire and emerged as something unbreakable. Where a girl sold to darkness had found light in the most unexpected place. Where a monster learned to be a man through the transformative power of being truly seen and loved. Years later, when Elena was old enough to ask about their story, Valeria told her a version that was true, but gentle. About a girl who lost her way and a man who helped her find it. About how sometimes the people who save us aren't heroes, but other broken souls trying to do better. About how love could grow in the strangest places if you were brave enough to let it. She didn't tell her daughter about the auction, or the captivity, or the violence. Those were details for another time, when Elena was old enough to understand that happy endings rarely came from simple beginnings. That sometimes you had to walk through darkness to appreciate the light. That the best loves were the ones that transformed both people into better versions of themselves. But she did tell her that every choice mattered. That freedom was precious. That you could survive terrible things and still build beautiful lives. And that sometimes, against all logic and reason, the person you thought was your nightmare could become your home. On the estate's terrace, as another sunset painted the sky in impossible colors, Valeria stood surrounded by her family, the children she'd birthed, the man who'd claimed her heart, the life they'd built from ashes and choice and stubborn hope. And she understood finally, completely, that love wasn't about perfect beginnings. It was about choosing each other, again and again, until the choosing became as natural as breathing, until the cage transformed into sanctuary, until the monster learned to be tender and the captive learned to fly. And in that understanding, in that sunset moment with her hand in Adrian's and their children's laughter filling the air, Valeria found the ending she'd never dared dream was possible. Not happily ever after, because life was never that simple, but happily despite everything, happily because of everything. Happily together, building light in the darkness, one choice at a time. And that, she thought, was more than enough.